across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome to the home of common sense. Lots to get through this afternoon. Thank you to Julia. She's back tomorrow at 10. We're going to talk about that teacher at a London school who's been banned from teaching kids after he told Muslim students that Britain is still a Christian state. I mean, is the UK still a Christian country? Do you feel that? Do you sense it? I mean, legally speaking, you know, head of the church is head of state and all that business. Your assessment on that. Also this afternoon, ministers are weighing plans to give workers a week's bereavement leave for distant relatives, with Sir Keir Starmer's bill covering in-laws, cousins, uncle. Sorry, do we need the flipping government to tell us how sad we're allowed to be? Wow. And there's a kind of like Dulux colour chart of, well, if it's a distant auntie and they don't live near, you haven't seen them for 20 years, you can take a week off. No, you can't. Can you take time off when a pet dies as well? I mean, that always comes up in these debates. We'll look at that in more detail as well. And two 17-year-old Afghan asylum seekers who arrived by small boat were jailed yesterday for raping a 15-year-old girl in a park. This is back in May after the victim filmed her abduction. A defence barrister warned the footage was so horrific it could spark disorder if it was widely released. I tell you what could also spark disorder: the people that allowed these two characters into the country in the first place. Unchecked, unfettered, no check, nothing at all. Mr. Starmer, you have questions to answer. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. Loads to get through here. As Julia was saying, it's an incredibly busy news day and a wide selection of stories here, and as the usual rules apply, anything you hear along the way, you want to get in touch with us, 0344 499 1000. That's where you should drop a voice note as well. I am going to throw out the obvious question: is the UK still a Christian country? I mean, what is a Christian country? What does it mean these days? And we know the basics, don't we? Don't steal, don't be rude, don't kill anyone. Envy is bad, vanity even worse. Love thy neighbour, don't sleep with thy neighbour, though. We get the basics, but how Christian are we? And the more fundamental question on this, and this is where it gets, this is really the centre point of the argument. This is really and truly the intricacies and the difficulties of this debate come down to this: how do we balance being a Christian country with free speech and liberal values that allow others to practice and believe what they like? So should a mosque be allowed to bellow out a call to prayer? Should a Jew be able to walk around wearing garb that clearly identifies their religion? Now, in some countries, of course, preaching or practicing another faith can land you in jail. In the worst cases, it could land you dangling from the end of a rope. And it's that dilemma, really, that informs, I think, this story. This is the teacher that's been banned from working with children after telling a Muslim child that Britain is still a Christian state. Now, that is actually a statement of fact. We can argue, and we will never know, I suppose, the thrust or the attitude in how this line was delivered, but it does get more interesting. This was a primary school teacher. These were year 6 kids, so they're around about the age of 10, who was referred to his local child protection board over comments made to a pupil in London. A senior detective from the Met Police's child abuse investigation team was also involved. What sort of country are we living in? A senior detective from the child abuse investigation team showed up on the case as well. So in this particular case, we don't have a name for this teacher, and that's probably a good thing as well. The teacher was suspended. The teacher was then sacked for this incident in which he allegedly admonished students. This is where I think is the crux. Admonished students for washing their feet in the sinks in the boys' lavatory. Police were called to investigate an alleged hate crime. Wow. I mean, seriously. Now, the feet washing thing, I don't know why anybody's washing their feet in sinks, for God's sake. But for some, that is a preamble to prayer, I believe. Now, the case is, naturally, it's intensified a lot of concern among free speech campaigners that laws intended to keep kids safe from harm from adults are being deployed to crack down on certain views, namely right-wing views. According to the child who made the complaint, the teacher told them the school was not a religious one, but there is an Islamic school a mile away if they wish to attend that instead. He said Britain is still a Christian state and pointed out that the King was also the head of the Church of England. Now, the teacher apparently crossed a line. Maybe he was angry. Clearly, he didn't think about the thought police lurking in the corner. His choice of words, like, well, if you don't like it, clear off, might have been a bit, for a group of 10-year-olds, was probably a bit bewildering coming from your teacher. But the bit about kids washing their feet in the sink, no, sorry, it's a school, mate. Don't be washing your feet in a sink. Don't be doing that. Are we still a Christian country? More people go to watch a football match on a Saturday than go to church on a Sunday. Now, there's a sobering thought to kick this one off. 0344 499 1000. I'm intrigued what you think about the specifics of the teacher in this case. I'm intrigued what you think about the identity of the UK. From hijabs to turbans, Torahs through to the Bible. All of which, in a healthy liberal democracy, you can practice or be who the heck you want to be. I mean, we've got tribunals saying it's kind of OK for a bloke to get changed in a woman's changing room in NHS hospitals. So that's how kind of liberal we seem to be. Where's that line, though? Where's that line when you say, actually, we're a Christian country, we have Christian values, and because of that, there's a bit of a bullet point list of do's and don'ts. Is that how it has to be? And what some people might go, well, I don't mind this religion doing this, I don't want them doing that. You get into all sorts of territory. And then you have to start, well, do we control the amount of people that are allowed to enter a country if they follow a particular faith? So we have a kind of almost a spreadsheet. We can have this many Hindus, this many Sikhs, Jews, Muslims, etc. But it's on the number base. You could never make that work, or could you? How Christian is the UK? 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. Let's get a word on this from Dave Wooding, who's back with us, columnist at The Sun, political journalist of many years. Good to see you, Dave.
Hi, Ian.
Always good to have you on with us. Let's talk about this. The specifics of this case began with this primary school teacher, a school in London. We have no names, and that's probably a good thing. But this teacher has now been banned from working with children after telling a Muslim pupil that Britain is still a Christian state. And just to sort of set this up, let's have a little listen to the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, when he was asked this very question.
In terms of a Christian country, I was christened, so that is my church has been all my life, and we are, that is wired into our informal constitution. Of course, we celebrate many other faiths as well, and I'm really proud that we're able to do so as a country.
Well, that's what he had to say. It was a very wishy-washy answer, wasn't it? Well, I was christened. So, well, that doesn't make the UK a Christian country because you once had a glass of water tipped over your bonce. I mean, I don't think that's the definition of it, but he mumbled through that answer. But it is this is an interesting story, whether the teacher crossed the line in this case, Dave.
I mean, that's when we're talking about culture. That's part of the culture of Britain, Christianity. The church bells ringing is as much a part of what we are as the leather on willow on the cricket pitch or football on a Saturday afternoon. And in the same way, when you go to Istanbul, you hear the call to prayer, and it all sounds fabulous there because you're in the culture of that particular country.
Of course.
And the problem is when you start mixing cultures. I don't have a problem with multiracial society. Race is a different thing, but trying to merge cultures. Sometimes, cultures do merge, but if a culture is to treat women in a different way or to have hanging or various things, then we don't want that in Britain. And this is the problem. And I don't know, obviously, unless you know precisely what this teacher said, you see, the thought of me being at primary school and seeing kids sticking their feet up and washing them in the basin would be would be a bizarre thing to.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's a no-no. But then the bit the teacher probably crossed the line when he went, well, if you don't like it, go to the Muslim school down the road. I mean, they're 10-year-old kids. I mean, I don't know whether that was the right way to approach it from a teaching perspective, but it doesn't change fundamentally the fabric of that discussion in terms of that is a bit odd. You know, it's like when you're on an aeroplane and some bloke starts praying in the aisle. I mean, I don't want to see, frankly, anyone pray on an aeroplane. I think that's the last place in the world I want to see someone. I'm thinking, what do they know? Have they been given a message from someone?
Some people are more...
Don't pray on a plane, OK?
Absolutely.
If that's not a film title, it should be.
I know someone who was going up to a football match up north, and he took a friend, and he wanted to stop to pray every so often because it was a certain time of day, and he stopped the car and ended up almost missing kickoff. He was nevertheless not used to that sort of behaviour, and if it's in your culture to do that, then you would leave extra time to make a journey.
Well, you'd think so,
yeah,
wouldn't
you would, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
but look, I digress there really. The truth is that we seem to jump down the throats of people when they defend Christianity here, and when people are being over pushy about other religions, we tend to let it go and drift and not crack down on them. I mean, hate preachers is one, which is really taking your culture and your religion to an extreme.
Of course,
nothing seems to have been done about them for many years.
Oh, there's loads of evidence out there. You know, hate preachers, they're all over the place. These characters, you know, they love it. They can't get out of bed unless they're wishing death on someone's nan. I mean, that seems to be what gets them up in the morning. I mean, it's extraordinary. And you're right, it does seem to get a bit of a free pass. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with a teacher in the context of talking about a country, saying, you know, the United Kingdom is a Christian country. Our head of state
it's a statement
is also
of fact.
it's a statement of fact. You know. The idea that teachers would sort of shun away from that would be awful as well. I don't know how, you know, the context of this particular teacher. I think he was probably, you know, right to pick up on the washing your feet in a sink. But maybe we don't know what his attitude was or how he imposed this view of his onto the kids. But fundamentally, to say that the UK is a Christian country, as you say, Dave, is a statement of fact. I mean, it's just that.
If I went to an Islamic country, I'll just say Islamic, but it could be a Jewish country or any other country, and wanted to go to take Holy Communion, I mean, I'd have to find somewhere to go and do it. Nobody would just give me the right to have it done in any given
Have you ever
place.
tried doing a Bible reading in Riyadh High Street?
Well, no.
I mean, it doesn't go down so
as
well.
you were saying earlier in your monologue,
I get the hump about that over there.
You'd be swinging from a rope if
they'll hang you up by your ghoulies before
absolutely.
6 o'clock. You know, there'll be no messing around.
And we tend to ignore, and sometimes you hear the clergy say this at Christmas about the persecution of Christians around the world, and it does happen. And we seem to be bending over the other way in the UK.
We're putting that question out there today. Are we still a Christian country? Do you feel that we're a Christian country? And if you are someone who goes to church on a regular basis, and I gave that stat earlier, that more people go to watch football on a Saturday than go to church on a Sunday. Even Liverpool, 10th in the league, by the way, Dave, even Liverpool fans manage to get to church.
Well, yes.
From time to time.
We have to pray these days.
I was going to say, there's every reason to, isn't there, at the moment? A lot of controversy going on there in your club.
No, absolutely.
What is going on? Let's move to this story. Take a week off work if your distant cousin dies, say Labour. Ministers are weighing up giving workers a week off to mourn distant relatives. Think in-laws, cousins, uncles, nieces. An entire week for this. This comes under Keir Starmer's new workers' rights bill with, quote, chosen family covered for bereavement leave. Let's have a listen then to the Employment Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, speaking about the new employment rights.
The Employment Rights Bill represents the biggest upgrade to workers' rights in a generation. What we said in our manifesto was that we felt day one rights on a number of areas were important, but that we'd also consult with business, with trade unions and civil society on that. Those discussions have taken place, and it means on one area around unfair dismissal, rather than it being a 2-year wait, it'll be a 6-month wait. That means the bill can go forward, because the risk was if this discussion and agreement hadn't been reached, then the bill would have been held up further. It means, because of the pragmatic approach that's been taken, from April next year, millions of your viewers will have better rights at work.
She is, of course, the Employment Rights Secretary. Is that right? Employment Secretary.
Education Secretary.
Sorry, She is the Education
That's
Secretary.
right.
Yes, and I said the Employment Secretary. God, you know what, during that clip playing, Finn was talking to me, our producer, in my ear, because my eyes did that strange thing where it zips across words. So she is the Education Secretary.
But she is in employment, so I suppose you're all right.
She is indeed. Culture Secretary, is she?
No, she is in employment.
So she's the Home Secretary. She's the Prime Minister, isn't she?
She will be by the end
is.
of this programme, yeah.
She might. Anybody could be. It won't be me, that's for sure. So do you take a week off work because a distant cousin dies?
Well, what this policy all seems to be about is it's this employment rights bill which is going through Parliament, pioneered or constructed by Angela Rayner, then late departed but soon to come back Deputy Prime Minister. And she wants to change the rules so that the family is not as we've traditionally seen it. She believes that the family has changed shape over many years. You know, the way, people don't necessarily get married these days. And so it could be a friend, a cousin, an aunt or an uncle who is closer to you than the traditional nuclear family of father, mother, spouse, son and daughter. So that they want to extend it so that even a friend, if a friend died, a close friend, you could take a week's compassionate leave up to 8 weeks after the death. Now, some people might say this is putting a burden on business because the cost of this, if people are going to take time off when a close friend or a distant relative it dies, then people may abuse it. That's the problem.
I mean, is it unfair? I don't like anyone that much, Dave, to take a week off, frankly.
Well, I'm not surprised if you're running this programme on talkTV. I mean, your opinions may drive people away from time to time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, listen, I mean, I do understand that. I mean, there's many, there's some kids who are raised by their grandparents, for example. So their grandparents are almost parental in that respect. And, you could be really close to your cousin. One of my sons is probably closer to his cousin than his own brother at the moment, because that's just how it is. There's an age gap between them. But where do you draw the line? Because it gets into pets as well. I don't know if they mentioned pets in this. But should you be allowed to take time off work if your cat does? Definitely no time off for a cat, OK? I can declare that now as a matter of fact.
No, I think so.
Dogs, maybe.
I mean, if an aunt or a grandparent dies, I would say it's reasonable to have a day off to go to the funeral. Yeah. Or maybe another day to go and comfort somebody or whatever. But yes. I think a week off for a parent or a child or
I mean, some people, when a parent dies, I've been through that, and I took a week off and because I wanted to go back to work after that week. Yes. And obviously my boss at the time said, well, do you want to take more time off? And that was very kind. But I didn't really want it. I didn't feel that's what I wanted to do. And some people were surprised at that. Wow, you've gone back to work. It's quite quick, isn't it? 1 week. But I mean, what is the time on
Sometimes it's better to get to work and get back among your friends and
without
your
doubt.
colleagues and feel that life does go on, unfortunately, or fortunately. But you're back among your friends and your colleagues. They show some support and sympathy and compassion. I think you get your life going.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can take a day. I'm taking a day off next week to go to a funeral next Thursday, and I think that's okay to take time off for a funeral. But taking time off because of your second cousin Shuey, who lives in Perth in Australia, who you haven't ever seen in your life, that would be pushing it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and it's going to be costly to business. The political element to this, though, Ian, is that it's Angela Rayner's bill. And she has recently sent a message to Number 10 via her allies that it would be unwise of the Prime Minister to water down this bill as it goes through Parliament even more. And that's with a backdrop of her possibly on manoeuvres, looking to replace him, talk of a dream ticket with Wes Streeting, which is being called Wangela. Leadership challenges all over the place. So I think that's what's being drawn.
I don't know how you could seriously show your face again if you were Angela Rayner in a I mean, she's elected, that's fine, that's a democracy. But in terms of running stuff, I mean, this is very much her kind of... if you had to take a guess, if you didn't know, who came up with this idea, you'd say Angela Rayner, all that workers' rights stuff, which is great, because the minute you sort of form any arguments against it, it's as if you don't care about people's rights. But of course you can sort of straddle, wear two hats on these things.
Yes. Well, don't forget as well, it would be rights from day one. You'd have these rights.
Yeah.
So you start work on the Monday, your second cousin twice removed dies on the Wednesday, and you take a week off.
Yeah. That's a bit weird, isn't it? We'll talk some more on this and other stories as well. And in particular, that question, is the UK still a Christian country? 0344 499 1000.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Dave Wooding is with us. Lots to get through here, including this story. The investigation has found that small boat migrants are being used as drug mules, carrying up to 1 kilogram of heroin on them at a time. This came from Talk's international editor Isabel Oakeshott, who's going to be releasing this exclusive documentary here on Talk tomorrow about the dangerous migrant camps in Calais that highlight all of these issues. Let's have a little tease.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
An absolute scandal. Tomorrow, 7 o'clock, right here on Talk. You can hear that in its entirety. And, of course, we'll be chatting to Isabel Moore over the coming days about the content of this. Something about this, Dave, doesn't really surprise me, to be honest.
No, that looks a terrific documentary.
Doesn't it?
I think I shall definitely be tuning in for that.
Yeah.
This story is just incredible. Not only are they coming into Britain and entering illegally and claiming asylum, often illegally, they're bringing drugs in as well. I mean, something like £75,000 worth of heroin or cocaine at a time, street value. What's effectively happening is that the criminal gangs behind the small boats are offering VIP tickets to the migrants, which means they can come over for free if they swallow, I assume, condoms or some other such
loaded with Class A
with drugs, and then they're of course passed to the criminal gangs over in the UK. Now, the big problem is here. Not only are we putting strain on our public services, clogging up the asylum and migration system, lots of illegal migrants entering, but it's fueling crime in Britain. We've already seen people accused of rape, sexual assault and theft who are in these migrant hotels and migrant barracks or wherever they're staying, or houses of multiple occupation, and now we learn it's also fueling the drugs industry too. So this is a real alarm that the problems get deeper and deeper, and we just don't know what else some of these gangs are up to.
Well, I mean, that is, to me, Dave, the most overarching headline of the whole grim story of the Channel migration. Nobody knows who these people are, where they came from, who, their specific ages. Were they part of a cartel, a gang? Was it trafficked? Was it individuals? Is it really, the case of a scientist in a laboratory in Tehran that got fed up with the horrendous regime and decided to save up £3,000 to pay a fella in Cali? I mean, is it really that? Is it something else? Nobody knows.
Well, whatever happened to smash the gangs, Ian? We were told by Keir Starmer 18 months ago when he became Prime Minister, we're going to go further than stopping the boats, we're going to smash the gangs. You don't hear him saying that very much these days. That phrase seems to have vanished. But the gangs, not only have they been smashed, they've expanded, and they're not just migrant gangs now, they're drug gangs.
Yeah. Indeed. Well, more on that tomorrow, 7 o'clock, right here on Talk. Finally, Dave, this is a kind of a curious story. Keir Starmer has become the first Prime Minister in history, well, obviously it could only have happened recently, first Prime Minister, though, to join TikTok. Yes, it will be as bad as you think. Should we have a little quick look at a video that he posted yesterday? Here's Keir.
TikTok, follow him.
Yeah, it has already been mocked by the Conservatives. Let's have a listen to that.
TikTok, follow him.
Have you lost control of your MPs, Prime Minister? Hello.
Conservative mocking of the TikTok Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
Well,
both released on TikTok, those.
Absolutely, and TikTok, of course, it's banned by government officials. You're not allowed to have TikTok on your phone if you work in government. So goodness knows how they've done this. I assume the Prime Minister's phone is not on TikTok. It's banned because it's owned by the Chinese, who are, of course, seen as the biggest spy threat incidentally, he's going to China on a trade mission in the new year, so maybe he's joined TikTok as a result. But when I saw this last night, I immediately followed him. I think he's got 14,500 followers already.
Yeah, it's got 15,500 now,
right? Okay,
which is more than the Conservative response has got. How's that doing, Finn? Oh, he's got 14,500. This has got 200,000 views, and the Tory one has got 35,000.
Right.
So.
Okay. Well, when I watched it last night, that music, the Christmas music, I thought this is like a scene from Love Actually.
Was a bit like that.
I mean, but Keir Starmer's hardly Hugh Grant as he strolled down the.
It's not, is he?
Down there, and the music. It's clearly one of these copyright-free
Yes.
Christmas songs, you know. So it was all a little bit naff, to be honest. But yeah.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's interesting that they kind of gravitate to all these kind of like. No, the funny thing is, I know there's more data on social media than there's ever been, and you know, some companies dying out on it, and some people earn a living from it. I mean, it's great if you can earn a living through YouTube or whatever. It's incredibly difficult to do, but it can be done. However, it's very rarely makes a massive difference to anything. So, you know, the Labour Party at the last election, you know, oh, it was our digital social media stuff that did it. Well, it might have been a help, but you had a massive open I mean, if you couldn't have won an election against the Tories, then there would have been no hope for anyone. So nobody really knows what this kind of stuff does.
No. And of course, people go on leaving their comments. I mean, you've seen it with footballers or anybody else. Loads of people weigh in with negative comments, and it'd be interesting to see how long it is before he switches off the comments section on TikTok to stop people.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, all these, everybody would be going on giving him a hard time.
Yeah.
But maybe he won't even see it himself.
I try to tell because my little boy loves gaming, and he says, you know, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to earn a living out of gaming. And of course, those that do earn a living out of gaming are multi-millionaires, many, many, many times over. But there ain't that many of them. It's a bit like winning the lottery. So you could become a TikTok absolute, you know, full-on Premier League top of the tree, and make a lot of money. But
it could become an influencer. But I think he should focus
genuinely, and everyone's an influencer.
He needs to focus on influencing his cabinet before he starts influencing the TikTok community.
You've got to be careful. Influence the people that actually matter, rather than getting hits on flipping TikTok, you great big dopey what's it. Listen, Dave, thank you very much. It was a very polite version of what I wanted to say. Dave Wooding with us. Thank you, Dave. We will see you very soon. Columnist at The Sun, of course, political journalist, and over to you. 0344 499 1000. Is the UK still a Christian country? Keir Starmer on TikTok, and all the other elements that we've discussed. Anything is up for grabs. Just gone 1:30. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Julie says, I've gone off you, Ian. Dogs are not more worthy of mourning than cats. Well, cats are just idiots, aren't they, really? I mean, when I say idiots, no, the owners probably. I say this with kindness to Julie in Harrow. Your cat is owned by several people. Right? There's loads of the neighbours also own your cat. You just won't admit it. So it mooches around, it goes in different houses, people feed it. Your dog is part of the gang. That's the difference. The cat's not part of the gang. The cat's an aloof bit of kit that lays on a shelf and just looks down on you. Whereas your dog, what a beautiful beast a dog is. They are part of the family in a very different kind of way. Peter in Northamptonshire, reference, are we still a Christian country? Says, I believe it is systematic failure of multiculturalism. One here, we are a secular society with broadly Christian values. I mean, officially, we are a Christian society. But what does that look like these days? And one from Cliff in Berkshire who says, it is a fact that we are constitutionally a Christian country. Our monarch is the defender of the faith and bishops have seats in the House of Lords. We don't act like a Christian country. It may be the time to make state completely secular. I'm a practicing Roman Catholic myself. And if you are, thank you, Cliff, for that. If you're somebody who regularly goes to church, remember, more people go to see a football match on a Saturday than sit on a pew on a Sunday. And in many ways, you know, that's quite sad, isn't it? It's the story that really prompted this question was that of the London primary school teacher who's been banned from teaching after telling Muslim pupils that Britain is still a Christian country. I mean, that is just a statement of fact. I don't know whether he said it in anger, whether he said it as a response to finding these kids washing their feet in a sink, which I think is something you do pre-prayer. Is that always the case? I don't know. Maybe you can tell me. Let's get a word from Tim Dieppe, who's head of public policy at Christian Concern. Tim, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian. Nice to be on.
Yeah, nice to have you with us. I mean, we can get into the teacher story in a second. And we don't know loads of detail. We've got some of the headlines. But broadly speaking on the question, are we still a Christian country? You're obviously a Christian, and that's fabulous. But when you look around the United Kingdom, does it still feel like a Christian place to you?
Well, Ian, I just want to correct something you just said then, because you said more people in a football stadium Saturday than on a church pew on a Sunday morning. I think the opposite is the case, actually. More people are in church on a Sunday morning that will attend all the football matches over the weekend. It's about 10% of the population who will be in church on a Sunday, and about 2%, I think, who will attend all the football matches that are scheduled over the weekend. So church is more popular than you might think, actually, you know, when you put it in that kind of perspective there. And obviously, constitutionally, we are a Christian country. We had the coronation just a couple of years ago, didn't we, 2023, and the King had to swear to uphold the Protestant reform religion established by law and all of that. So, you know, that's very much part of it. And our laws and our culture have been very much shaped by Christianity and Christian values and Christian principles and biblical ideas and so on. And I don't dispute that is, we're moving away from that, and we've adopted a kind of multiculturalist sort of approach, and this is, you know, starting to be, you know, dismantling really effectively the Christian foundations of our society. And as a result, a lot of people are wondering where we are now, what are we doing now, and sort of looking and looking back and wondering, you know, gosh, actually, when we had Christianity, wasn't it rather better? Perhaps with a nostalgic view, but, you know, I would agree with them, of course, that maybe we should go back to a Christian foundation, a Christian basis and Christian morals, because if we don't get our morals from Christianity, where do we get them from? And that's really the big question that our nation is facing, I think, at this point in its history.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because we are, I suppose, we're balancing between being a liberal society with free speech and, you know, the right to have your own views and worship whatever you want. But simultaneously, some might not unreasonably argue that it's those liberal values that have diluted some of our kind of Christian backbone.
Yes, I think there's something in that as well. And I think, you know, the sort of desire to welcome everybody and allow all different views, which I agree with. We should have freedom of religion, we should have freedom of speech and all of that kind of thing very much in there. But then it ends up becoming that, you know, this story that you were talking about today, this teacher, you know, getting, you know, disciplined, losing his job, and then, you know, ostensibly banned from teaching. I think they managed to get that bit overturned for just saying this is a Christian country. An extraordinary thing. And we've had people arrested, some losing their jobs sometimes, and even arrested for saying things deemed to be Islamophobic, even just quoting the Quran and things like that. And so, you know, we've moved from one blasphemy law effectively to another. And now we have a government that wants to adopt a official government definition of Islamophobia, which, you know, poses a real issue in terms of lots of people could lose their jobs for saying something that somebody deems Islamophobic and so on. So it seems like as Christianity has dwindled in its influence, and I only blame the church for that, Islam is moving in to take dominance and to take authority and to take into the spiritual vacuum, so to speak. And consequently, we have these various things, and effectively a kind of Islamic blasphemy code being proposed by the government.
I mean, that is a really interesting point, isn't it? Because I was, when we were talking about this teacher, and again, you know, if he apparently said to these kids, they were year sixes, so they're sort of like 10 years old, said, you know, well, if you don't like it, there's a Muslim school down the road. Now, if he said, that was probably a fairly impolite way to speak to 10-year-olds if he said it in anger, and does sound a little bit dismissive. Simultaneously, I'm also finding it a bit weird that kids are washing their feet in a sink. You know, I'm thinking that ain't something that we normally do. So,
I agree.
But of course they would say, well, that's our faith. And it's like, well, no, I'm sorry, because firstly, that particular school was not a school of any religion. And secondly, do we then have a bullet point list of do's and don'ts? And that's I guess, the problem we have here.
And then you have pressure as well for girls to wear the hijab and be allowed to wear the hijab. And then before you know it, they're all having to wear the hijab. Then you have pressure for prayers in the school. And we've seen legal cases about this. They had that in the Michaela school, didn't we? A whole sort of activist group campaigning to allow Muslim prayers in the school playground and creating it in a very divisive kind of manner and all of that. And then you have campaigns for halal food in all our schools as well. To be served and so on. So this gradual Islamization of our society, and particularly it is targeting our education system, is very much real and very alive there. And we've seen it quite a lot. And this, you know, I think that we do need rules and regulations about these kind of things and washing your feet in the sink.
But that's hard, isn't it? Because if we got rid of the hijab, you'd have to get rid of the turban, you'd have to get rid of all manner of other sort of symbolism. That would go with it, wouldn't you? You'd have to, like a Hasidic Jew walking down the street would not be able to look like they do because of.
I think a hijab in a primary school is kind of like, you know, below puberty it's quite a radical view. Most Muslims would not put hijab on children below puberty levels. So yeah, in a primary school it shouldn't be required. But still, you have got some very hardline Muslims who are arguing for it, and I think the states and the country needs to stand up to that. I'd be fine with it in a secondary school, but then, you know, face coverings is the next thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know,
well, that's a good point. What about the Christian values of this country? I mean, do you sense that we can get it back? I mean, many people would, at the very beginning of the programme on this very point, I was sort of going through the obvious things, you know, don't steal, don't be horrible, don't kill anybody, love thy neighbour, don't sleep with thy neighbour, all of this. Now, most religions would say, well, we all believe in that. We've got that in common, whether you're a Jew, a Muslim, Hindu, Sikh, whatever. Everyone fundamentally believes in those basic tenets of their faith.
Well, but there are very different morals in terms of Islam, particularly in relation to women, right? It kind of the whole face covering aspect, the whole aspect of how many wives you can have, and all of that kind of thing comes into play as well. How women should dress. And then, of course, you've got jihad and, you know, Muhammad, who fought in lots of battles and killed lots of people, and Jesus never fought in any battle and healed people rather than kill people. You know, you can make these very obvious comparisons between religions. They're not equal. They're not just equivalent. There are very serious differences between the religions. And Jesus is the perfect example, as has long been recognised. And it's whether we follow Jesus and his example or Muhammad and his example. And I can tell you, I know very clearly which one I'd rather be following as a society and which one I'd rather follow as a culture. Jesus' example is far, far better than Muhammad's.
On that point, Tim, great to have you on with us. Thank you. That's Tim Dieppe. He's head of public policy at Christian Concern. As a Christian, he would say that. If you were a Muslim, you'd be saying, oh, actually, I think Muhammad probably trumps it in that respect. I mean, the whole... And again, then you get into people who are sort of evangelical in their faith and others who are sort of casual worshippers. So when you consider what happened with Charlie Hebdo in Paris and people who lost their lives because they satirised a prophet, which is one person's interpretation or one group of people's interpretation of a faith, and it's that sacred that you never, you know, you don't so much as... make any kind of negative comment. I mean, that's lunacy. I mean, that is absolute sort of. It's like that's a mental illness, for goodness sake. If that's the path you go down, and I get it. If you cross, there's places around the world, I'm sure, where they've strung you up if you were a bad Christian back in the day, and maybe some of those deep south states that might take a dim view of your lack of ecclesiastical credentials. I don't know, but you take the point. But broadly speaking, would it not be fair to say that we share a commonality, but maybe the cultural aspect is what's missing. Mark's in Manchester on this point. Mark, what have you got for us?
Hi Ian, how are you doing? Okay?
Very good, thanks. Yeah, far away.
Yeah, I'm a British Jew, and I think the key expression here is assimilation. My family has lived here since the late 19th century. We escaped the pogroms of Russia, and one thing my great-great-great-grandparents wanted to embed in the family was that we were to become British and loyal to the country. And this resonates amongst the 240,000 Jews that live in the UK.
Yeah.
We've always felt a loyalty to the country that we live in, and we recognise it as a Christian country, and we live within our own religious ways, you know, sort of under the radar. One of the nicest things I see every Saturday is that at the holiest point of our service, we always praise the royal family and the government for making it a kind country to live in. And you'll find generally that wherever Jews live anywhere in the world, they are loyal to that country 100% through, because we recognise that each country has an underlying religion. So if you go to Israel, it's a Jewish state, and you respect that. If you go to an Arab country, it's an Arab state. And if we're living in a Christian country, we respect that too.
And I've always thought that when it comes to lessons we learn from other faiths, I mean, I think there's a whole raft of lessons that can be learnt from the Jewish faith, not just everything you've just talked about, which is, you know, so lovely to hear, Mark, but also the kind of Jewish story, Jewish assimilation with other countries after World War II, what happened. I mean, if any group of people can pick themselves up after that, then goodness me, I mean, that should be the yardstick by which anyone measures their ability to move forward. And I don't think that should be forgotten, but it often is. And when I hear other sort of smaller groups of people say, oh, there's an injustice, something terrible's happened, we've got, you know, this happened in our past, I think, well, tell a Jew that, because they will tell you a very different story about how you deal with things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the shameful thing currently in the United Kingdom is that because Jews are being more marginalised because of things happening of thousands of miles away between Israel and Palestine, I think that where I introduce myself as a British Jew, I'm getting more and more like feeling like I'm a Jew living in Britain. So there's only 240,000 of us living in the United Kingdom.
Yes, I know. It's a tiny amount.
Yeah, tiny amount of the population, but we're feeling more marginalised within the country.
Which is really sad, isn't it? And you know, that, I mean, I often quote the Badil book, Jews Don't Count. I'm sure you're familiar with it, Mark, you know, but it goes into exactly that, you know, of all forms of racism. For some reason, you know, racism against Jews sort of gets a bit of a free pass, and in some cases a big green light.
Indeed, absolutely. You know, we can't walk down our main city centres because of demonstrations that really shouldn't be continuing because of the ceasefire, etc. But I want to move away from the Middle East. The fact is that when I see a Union Jack on the lamppost, when I see an England flag on the lamppost, it's part of my identity. I was brought up to believe I am an English person. The fact that I am Jewish is merely my religion. And whatever I can give and contribute to the great country that I live in, that's what I want to do. And therefore, my message out there is, especially on the immigration issues, that if people are not willing to assimilate into a Christian country, go back to where you came from.
And I think that's, you know, a reasoned argument on this point when we're talking about, you know, the values, because it all ties in. It's culture, it's values, it's all of that. Great call, Mark. Thank you very much indeed, Mark in Manchester. Lovely words as well. Thank you, sir. Just before we go to a quick break, more calls from you on the way. 0344 499 1000. Some breaking news. Former Children's Commissioner Baroness Longfield has been chosen to chair the inquiry into the grooming gangs. This is, of course, after months of delays, resignations, and people who were looked at as favourite to chair it deciding they didn't want to any longer put their name forward. The Home Secretary said that Baroness Longfield will stand down as a Labour peer after she was chosen to chair the national inquiry into this absolutely, I mean, as serious and as crucial as it gets, inquiry into grooming gangs. Baroness Longfield said, I will not shy away from difficult and uncomfortable truths wherever we find them. Well, we will wait and see. We will judge you, Baroness, on that as this unfolds, and please let it happen soon. Our lines are open. This is Talk.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, Talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Let's go back to your calls. This will be Riz, who's over there in Bedford. Riz, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Hello there. Good afternoon, Ian. Nice
Hi.
to speak with you. I remember you from the old LBC days.
Wow. Yeah, back then.
Right.
Just a mere lad.
That's right. You were a mere young man that time. I've been listening to all this controversy with this teacher, right? And I suspect the teacher, I don't blame him. I suspect he must have got a little bit frustrated, maybe. I suspect, seeing the kids washing their feet in the sink, right? I want to address that.
Yeah, I think that's the problem, isn't it? Because I think his wording about, if you don't like it, go to the school down the road is probably not kind to 10-year-olds.
Yeah, I agree with you.
But the bit about being a bit miffed about kids sticking their smelly feet in a sink is probably a reason to get the hump.
No, I hear that. I hear you. And firstly, of course, this is a broadly Christian country. A lot of people are secular. This is a lack of education, right? And I do sympathise with the teacher. He must have got a bit miffed when he saw that. Yeah, and I just want to address a couple of the main thing I want to sort of get out there with you and the other listeners is that I'm from the Islamic faith. Look, you have your prayer ablutions, okay? You do your ablution, which includes washing the feet. But here's the key thing. When you do your ablutions, you obviously wear your shoes and socks and whatever, right? you can just wipe over your socks. You don't need to stick your blooming foot in a public sink area, right? This is lack of education, sheer ignorance in our community. I see it all the time, Ian, right? The people that got this sort of backward kind of thing, they don't have no awareness or courtesy for others, right? So you can just wipe over your socks. I don't know why I see it myself. When you do your ablutions, right, and your prayer time comes, okay, you do the ablution, washing the face, hands, the arms, you just wipe. All you do is just wipe over it, and then just wipe over the top of your socks. That's your ablution is complete. You know, all this rigmarole and this kind of thing. I would even admonish the children if I saw that. So you don't need to do this.
You don't need to do it. I remember seeing an imam from a Middle Eastern country talking about some of the things that happen over here. And I can't remember what the specific... It was something about a surgeon who was in a Muslim surgeon. She was in a tribunal, and it was something about covering her arms or not covering her arms or something like this. And this guy from the Middle Eastern country, which sadly I can't remember which one, but he was, clearly a practicing, leading Muslim scholar. Sure. And he said, we stopped arguing about this in 1952.
Exactly.
He said, what are you doing over there in the UK?
No, exactly, and you got spot on, right? You know, we have members in our community, unfortunately, who take this rigid, inflexible attitude. No, you must wash your feet every prayer. You don't. You just wipe over your socks, make it easy for the children. Look, another thing I thought about when I was listening to the debate, you had the Catherine Boble School, the exemplary school in London.
Yeah.
Remember, there was all that controversy. The kids would suddenly do like a congregation meeting. You don't need to do that. I don't know what we got some really ignorant.
So you don't need to do that. Someone was trying to make a point. You sense, Riz.
Exactly. Okay. You can just pray in your car, for God's sake. And one other example I want to put out there for you, just to get some sort of understanding for people out there, right? I agree with the teacher. I would admonish kids not to put their blooming feet in the sink. It's wrong. You don't do this, right? Do your ablutions at home and just wipe over your socks during the day if you feel the need to pray. The thing is this: you can even pray in your car, for God's sake, right? And also in the Islamic faith, these are general principles in Islam. Sure. So, for example, there's a prayer just after noon. Just after the noon, you know, when the sun hits the meridian.
Yep.
Just shortly after, there's a prayer that comes. There's 5 prayers a day, as everybody knows, right? There's a prayer that comes in afternoon, right? Just after the sun reaches zenith, it's meridian, and that prayer consists of 4 units of prayer. 4 units, right? You can pray 2. If you're traveling or you might be in a meeting and you don't have enough time, you can pray that. You can shorten prayers. You know, these are things like that which are still lacking in our community.
Right. So these are things that can be done. That things don't have to go to the extent that you're identifying here. Riz, listen, I have to step in because the news is about to kick in. You've been fabulous. What a great call as well. That's Riz from Bedford. On that question. More comment from you on the way. 0344 499 1000. You leave a voice note there as well. Right now, let's get the news headlines. It's 2 o'clock.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yeah, welcome back. The home of common sense. What are we talking about here? Loads, in fact, including the teacher at that London school who's been banned from teaching at that school. I think the ban of teaching altogether has been rescinded. But this is after he told Muslim students that Britain is still a Christian state. Now, in the context of teaching, nothing wrong with that. Did he go too far, though? The primary school teacher was referred to the local Child Protection Board, and even the old bill were called in for a potential hate crime. Goodness me. Is the UK still a Christian country? We'll take more of your calls and comments on that throughout the course of the programme. Also this afternoon, ministers are weighing up plans to give workers a week's bereavement leave for distant relatives. Sir Keir Starmer's bill covers in-laws, cousins, uncles and nieces. It's an odd question. It's slightly dark question, not always the most comfortable, but, you know, should there be a league table as to how long you can take off for different kinds of relatives? Should bereavement be the reason? Details on that. And the story of two 17-year-old Afghan asylum seekers who arrived in small boats have been jailed for raping a 15-year-old girl back in May this year. This is after the victim filmed her own abduction. The defence barrister even warned that the footage was so horrific it could spark disorder if it was widely released. Where are you pointing the finger on this one? 0344 499 1000. Well, obviously with people who rape is where we point the finger. People who facilitate potential rapists, maybe that's the point you want to get involved. This comes from Quinn in Rotherhithe, who says, yes, we are a Christian country. We've just got to stop putting Muslims in position of authority. Islamic countries don't have Christians in any power positions. You won't read this out. Home of common sense, really? Why would we not read it out? Literally sent it to me, Quinn, to be read out. And the only reason we wouldn't read something out is if it's either been repeated by someone. Oh, God. This comes from, and I think it's an interesting point. Do you have any Christians in positions of power in the politics of Muslim countries? It's a fair question. Maybe somebody can respond. This from Sean, who says, the country is being run by idiots. We might not be religious or practicing Christians, but we have Christian values ingrained in our DNA. The fools in power have done their best to dilute this over many years. With Keith Starlin, the worst of the breed, the silent majority will unleash a backlash on the Uni Party and they will be obliterated, says Sean, far-right, racist, misogynist thug. He's obviously parodying himself. Sean, thank you very much indeed for that. Yeah, you see, I wonder, though, I mean, a reform government, if that is what we're nudging towards, based on current polling, would suddenly the country feel like a more Christian country? Is there anything that's going to literally happen? I mean, they've got a big old to-do list over the Reform UK. I'm not absolutely sure whether be more Christian would necessarily make the top 10 in terms of priorities. How would you put that into action? Lines are open on all of that. And also this, as I alluded to, ministers weighing up giving workers a week off work to mourn distant relatives. Think in-laws, cousins, uncles, nieces, an entire week off. I mean, how do you gauge that? This is Keir Starmer's new workers' rights bill with chosen family covered for bereavement leave. Let's get a word from Joanna Marchong, Head of Communications and External Affairs, the Adam Smith Institute. Joanna, nice to have you with us. I mean, it's one of those kind of odd subjects that you can kind of have a bit of fun with in a curious way, because you go, well, what if your budgie dies? You know, if your hamster dies? You know, I was close to my little hamster when Susie fell off her climbing frame. I can't tell you how devastated I was as a 7-year-old. Didn't get any time off school, though, which frankly was abuse, but that's another story. Never got over it. But there's a very serious issue to this. There's also a serious economic issue to this one.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on.
Pleasure.
this story, so far, everyone's been talking about compassion because it is a really tricky subject. But what the government is now kind of questioning / wanting to do is expand all these rules regarding bereavement leave, and they're opening it up to the public. So right now we have really strict laws, which, by the way, companies will be able to enforce their own, but from a government statutory basis, you only get bereavement leave if you've lost a child under 18 years old and you have a week off. Right now, we're talking about how long can someone take off, who qualifies under you're allowed to take this leave. So in the consultation, it actually says close friends and relationships that are not related, but take the place of traditional relationships. So that could be close friends, I mean, like whoever you know. And as you know, with a lot of these policies that Labour are looking at in the Workers' Rights Bill, you can just see the door opening for it to be abused and being taken advantage of.
And that's the problem, isn't it? I don't know whether, I mean, when you get given a job and you get hired for a new job, are you going to have to sort of nominate who your kind of chosen family are? I understand it. Some kids are raised by their grandparents for various reasons, stuff like that. Of course, I understand that. But are you able to say, my distant cousin Mabel, who lives in, I don't know, Cape Town or Kathmandu, wherever, you've never met in your life, are you allowed to put Mabel down as, your chosen family and cop a week off work?
Well, you're saying it completely correct. Like, what we're now wondering is how much sway businesses will be able to have to assess the situation for themselves. So we don't know how long these people will be able to take off. We don't know what documents of proof we'll need, like what kind of evidence. Does a photo of me and the same person with this room work? Can we, how much can they claim? Will it be paid, unpaid? So government doesn't allow you to take it paid, or they don't force businesses to pay you. But workers and businesses already have policies in place where you can qualify for paid bereavement leave. So if you're working at a company and their terms are flexible, why wouldn't you have a paid week off just because, I don't know, you can have it?
If it's a pay, yeah. And would this just be in the public sector? I mean, what would they compel the private sector? And this is where, you can hear the kind of almost the haunting chants of Angela Rayner over your shoulder, who has sort of a curious idea of what workers' rights and relationships with bosses should be. Bosses bad, workers good, all the time, all of that. And there is that sort of sense that it will become mandatory. So not only would employers be dealing with national insurance hikes, business rates going through the roof, minimum wage increasing, they now might have to give somebody about a month off work over the course of a year if you lost 4 very distant relatives.
Yeah, exactly. Also, talking about the workers' rights bill, that is riddled with issues and businesses are scared. And what you can't really put a price on is the level of uncertainty that businesses are actually feeling, because the consequences of that are seeping through into so many different spheres of our economy.
Yeah.
I mean, the government's already admitted that the bill itself could potentially cost businesses up to £5 billion a year.
Wow.
So that's the hit that we're looking at. I mean, earlier this year, we saw businesses band together for one of the very first times and say we all have issues with specific parts of this bill. There needs to be serious amendments or so many of it scrapped.
Is there is there a way of gauging? Some people might have, and sort of just away from the economics of this, just the sort of a general human side, Joanna, it's quite difficult, isn't it, to you can't have a one-size-fits-all policy. You can't say, right, OK, for an aunt it's 3 days, for a parent it's 2 weeks, for a sibling it's 1. I mean, there's no... How do you judge that? I mean, some people's lives completely fall apart when somebody dies. They could be off work for a year with, severe trauma, depending on the circumstances, I guess, of someone's death. If somebody... I don't know, if your nan's 115 and she dies, I think that's almost a point of celebration, frankly, if you got to those impressive years.
Yeah, so exactly. It's so hard to regulate, and it's a very tricky scenario for a lot of people. I think what we always forget, we have this this idea in the media that businesses are these evil conglomerate, massive institutions that don't care about workers. That's not true. Your employer will want you to perform at your best, to work the most efficient that you can, and at the end of the day, perform well. And obviously, someone going through grief will not be performing well, and there won't be any point to having them in the office. What happens already is that employers are allowed to use their discretion to see the situation unfold and then know what to do. You're taking away the rights and the choice from employers, and you're just kind of forcing on them, saying that this legislation has to happen.
Yeah.
And even on the flip side of that, if an employer knows someone is lying about something, they're helpless, and they have to just say fine, because it's required by law.
Indeed. Joanna, on that point, thank you very much indeed. Nice to have you on with us. Joanna Marchong, who's Head of Communications and External Affairs at the Adam Smith Institute. This is a tricky one. I think if you've lost a child, then I think I would be inclined as an employer to say, you know, you literally take as much time as you need on this. And in fact, and if it's a child, then that's obviously clearly so enveloped with ultimate grief, injustice, and sadness, and life-changing disposition. Then I don't know what you're meant to do with that. When somebody's really old, I can't be the only person who's had that. You know, when you work with somebody who you think is quite old, I mean, there's people who work with me that probably think I'm quite old, but, you know, when I meet somebody who's quite old and they talk about their mum or dad, and I always think, do you have a mum or dad? You're like 90. How have you got a mum or dad? And the greatest example of that was when I was working with the late and great Mike Dickin, which many of you will remember. I mean, Mike, in my head, was sort of about 80. I think at this time he was about 70, and I was out on the balcony at the back of the old building that we used to work from, where everybody would go for a cigarette. And Mike just turned to me and went, "Yeah, a bit of a rough day, mate." And I said, "Well, what's happened?" He went, "My nan died." And I thought I must have misheard him. This guy's older than God's teeth, right? And I said, "What?" He went, "My nan died." I said, "Your nan died?" And he went, "Yeah." And it's like she was something like 105 or something. The numbers did work out when you thought about it. Mike Dickin had a nan? I mean, this is unbelievable. It's like, you know, discovering King Charles has a great-grandmother around. I mean, it's just lunacy. But when somebody of that age passes, I think, is your mourning somewhat more, is it sort of less in a way? You're going to miss the person, but there's no tragedy in the conventional sense of an illness or an accident. Someone's just lived a lot of good years and they've done really well. And if you've lived to 105, I mean, what does families expect? You're meant to live forever or something? But employers should be mindful of each individual situation. It's on that point we speak to Hazel in Hampshire. Hazel, how are you?
Yeah, I'm all right, thanks.
Good.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts on this?
Well, today is the 39th anniversary of the day my husband died.
Okay.
And he was 40. He was in the army. He'd been ill for a long time with cancer. They cut his pay because he wasn't A1 fit, so I had to go to work and leave him on his own all the time, which is sad because I should have been with him, you know. And my two children, who were school kids at the time, they had to come home every day and find him there, and they were always frightened. They'd come home and find him dead. It was just absolutely horrendous.
Sure.
And when he died, I rang the boss and let him know that, you know, he's passed away now. And he said, yes. We only allowed 3 days, aren't you? So he said, you will be back here on Thursday. If you're not here Thursday, he said, you won't have a job to come back to.
3 days?
And I was so horrified. I said, I'm waiting for his parents to arrive from Wales. I said, I've got 2 broken-hearted children. I said, I can't cope with all this. I can't go to work and just leave everything and walk away from it. And he said, be there or you won't have a job to go to. And I won't use the language I used, but I told him where to put his job, basically.
What kind of, don't tell us the company, but what sort of work was it?
It was assembly work in a factory.
Wow.
I mean, it's not like I was a vital component. Do you know what I mean? I mean, he could have done without me. He used to manage when people
But
were
also,
off sick with flu.
I
or
was going to
whatever,
say,
you know.
people can be off longer than that when they're not very well with a cold.
Exactly.
And the fact that you were dealing with the loss of your husband, but also looking after two heartbroken children who were still at school, and you know, you barely got time to get your head around it after 3 days. Nothing is real. You haven't even got to that stage of, you know, thinking about funerals and goodness knows what else.
Yeah,
I mean,
you got all that to think
it's a
of,
terrible time. 3 days, that is
awful.
grim. I'm so sorry. Hazel, thank you very much indeed. It's obviously a very memorable day for you, and I hope you get through it in the positive fashion rather than the negative, if that makes sense. I think most bereaved people understand that. Hazel, thank you in Hampshire. 3 days, I mean, you should go to the boss should go to jail for that. Although Craig says, I had one employee tell me his gran had died 3 times. He obviously forgot at least one of the previous excuses. Yeah, my nan's died, mate. Sorry. Didn't she die? I mean, you can have 2 grands, of course. I suppose in some sort of blended family situation, you might have 3. Not likely, though. Vinny says, what happened to taking a day or 2 off from your holiday time? I suppose you could do that if you really wanted more days. I don't know. I think each case has got to be judged on its own merit, hasn't it, in terms of time off for bereavement. And when I asked if you extend it to pets, I wasn't trying to be sort of smart on saying that. I think genuinely, I mean, if my little dog died, I mean, Bella, my lovely little dog, if she wasn't around, I would be devastated. I think I might... I don't know, what am I entitled to, Finn? Finn's the producer. What am I allowed off if, sadly, Bella was no longer with us? He's not even answering me. He's listening to Radio 4. Shipping forecast again. It says an hour. I should be allowed an hour off for a dog. I don't know. It's tricky. Cats, dogs, you know, animals that are part of the kind of family. Anything other than that, I mean, rabbits, no. You can't take time off for your rabbit dying or your hamster. That doesn't count, right? Is that fair? So but I would imagine there's lots of companies out there where people have said, I can't come into work because my gerbil died. 0344 499 1000. That is where you'll find us. This is Talk.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
And how far do you extend that business of, you say we're a Christian country, but we're also a liberal, free speech country as well? I know there's some big compromises on certain aspects of free speech, but broadly speaking, you take the point. So we don't stop other people of other faiths saying, you can't be a Sikh or you can't be a Muslim or a Jew. You're allowed to do whatever you like, and that's the whole point. But what happens if the do whatever you like somehow infringes on the basic or the fundamentals of what you consider to be contemporary Christian life? I don't think broadly it's something the average person on a daily basis experiences. But of course, when countries are charged with, governments are charged with, looking after, if you like, the identity of a country, we don't struggle to look at other nations in many respects and enjoy their identity, whether it's a perceived one or whether it's clearly written there in stone. People like going to Australia because of, and there is a sort of there's certain elements and strands that you associate with Australia, and you want to go there for that. If you went to Australia and didn't meet any Australians, I think you'd be a bit peed off, frankly. You'd think, well, that's a bit weird, isn't it? I went there's no Australians. Everyone's Greek in Australia now. And fine people they are too. But I more expected to find them in Greece than I would in Australia. And therefore, what would normally happen culturally has kind of shifted in Australia. Some argue, who cares? Does it even flipping matter? But that's down to whether you protect the identity. We like watching those documentaries, those, very worthy things on the telly that talk to us about, amazing traditions and ways of life in other places. And we sort of celebrate it. We go, isn't it fantastic what they do there? And thank goodness they've been untouched by outside hands and they don't have any issues with somebody telling them to change their ways. And we sort of admire that. But if you said that about your own country, OK, yeah, we can be fully Christian, but there's a lot of stuff we've got to ban, and that's everything from the Torah to the turban and anything in between. Face coverings, mosques, calls to prayer, circumcision, everything, all of that would all go in the name of, because we're a Christian. Could you conceivably do that? We're going to take some voice notes in just a second. Let's speak firstly to Nigel on this point in London on whether we're still a Christian country. Nigel, good afternoon.
Well, good afternoon. But there's one word you didn't mention just a few moments ago. It's called tolerance.
Tolerance,
it didn't come into your argument.
Well, tolerance, I was making the point about being a liberal and a free speech society, which I suppose does kind of nudge at the idea of tolerance.
It nudges, Ian. But I wanted to say...
Well, no, it literally explains it.
Yeah, but you mentioned about, the Torah, circumcision, etc., etc., etc. So let me tell you where I'm coming from. I'm a white, English, Jewish man of a fourth or fifth generation in this country, and my wife is a lady of colour who's a Christian, and her father's a minister.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy to accept, endorse, and celebrate all the Christian festivals. I'm not in any way want to change it. I'm happy to live in what I believe was a Christian country. However, there is some changes in the air where I don't think you're allowed to celebrate Christianity or allowed to be Christian in as much as you used to be. We have preachers who are arrested because it may offend someone 50 yards away. I think it's totally and utterly unacceptable and abhorrent that people cannot celebrate that we are a Christian country. Now, this is quite similar to a thing in America, for instance. So in America, which I'm sure you've been to, they're very proud to wave their flag. But if you wave a flag here, it's deemed to be something of a baiting aspect to something else, which I think, again, is absolutely totally ridiculous.
France as well. French people love being French. I mean, they just love the idea of their own Frenchness.
Of course they should. And I think that people here should celebrate Christianity. They should enjoy it. And, of course, we allow and we accept that other religions exist.
But just to interject for a second, so you're Jewish by birth but not practicing, because you're married to a...
I'm not practicing. I respect my religion.
Okay. But you're married to a Christian. Some might say you therefore disrespect your religion because you
Not at all.
you diluted the natural order of things.
No, I spoke to my rabbi and he said, no, if you're in love and it's a woman you're happy with, then I give you my blessing. And at the end of the day, I respect my wife. My wife goes to church every Sunday.
Yep.
Her father's
and don't ever come to this synagogue again.
And I actually think it's fantastic, you know, that we live in a very harmonious relationship. And where we live, in actual fact, is a very religious Jewish area part of London. But everyone gets along well, you know, all the local Jewish people except my wife totally. It's wonderful. But as I say, I think it's a great shame that people cannot celebrate Christianity, cannot celebrate their religion without it being stamped on or looked at some form of weaponizing. I think it's disgraceful.
Yeah, on that point, thank you very much, Nigel, for that. Let's get a call on days off work. Here's a voice note. It comes from Sally in Lincolnshire.
This government won't be happy until it's got rid of all business. This ridiculous thing about having time off for bereavements of anybody and anything will be literally the last nail in the coffin of business. That's what they want.
Interesting point from Sally. And Carl in Derbyshire says, I'm pushing 60. I've got 21 cousins over in Ireland. The majority of them are older than me. If they started pegging it soon, I could conceivably be considered a part-time worker. That would be the problem. You get a week per cousin. That's half a year, right? You'd be working. Adam in Nottingham, on this issue of taking time off. What have you got for us, Adam?
Yeah, I just don't think grief can be quantified like that.
True.
I mean, you was mentioning about pets, and it wasn't recently a report come out by psychiatrists and doctors that the loss of a pet can be as just, if not even more devastating than the loss of a close family member, because that pet is with you 24 hours, whereas the close family member probably pops in once a week for a cup of tea and chat, and you rely on the pet. The pet's always next to you. When I lost my dog, I saw, and pet owners will know this phrase, I saw the shadow for many months after my dog died. I saw the shadow right next to me. He was there, and that's grief.
Did you need time off when that happened?
I never even thought I could take time off for my dog. My dad died recently, and I think I spoke to you about him when we was on about the right to die. My dad has actually passed recently.
Yeah.
I had a week off work for that. I had to justify an extra day in order for a pilgrimage to my boss, but my boss was just asking the questions because he had to from the higher ups, but he didn't question it any further than he had to. So I've had a week off work, and then you could probably ask me, so what would you do? I don't know what would do. All I know is that I think it should be taken on a basis by basis. If your dad's died, you're close to your dad. You know, you can't quantify that grief. You know, you can't quantify the grief of if you were close to your cousin. You was mentioning cousin, but if you were close and that cousin, you saw that cousin every week or two days a week, and you relied on that.
They could be your best mate.
Yeah, exactly.
But then it comes to best mates as well. You know, I mean, obviously you have time off for a funeral, and you can't quantify it really, can you? It's almost impossible. But listen, I take your point, Adam. Thank you for that, and I get it. The thing about the dog, it really does, for some reason, resonate in some respects more than humans. You know, there are people whose best friend and greatest form of company is their dog. And when I get home from work and, you know, sit there on the sofa, whack on a bit of Benson Boone and sit there with the dog, you know, it's a heavenly situation, especially with a beer as well. 0344 499 1000, 2:30, this is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 0344 499 1000. Just gone 2:30. This is a beyond tragic story for a whole number of reasons. Mostly, almost exclusively the victim, clearly. But there are other questions that should be asked around this. 2 teenage asylum seekers who arrived on small boats have been jailed for raping a schoolgirl. The 15-year-old's phone, the victim's phone, capturing her being removed in this horrendous, awful, horrific attack. The defence barrister even warned that it could spark disorder if made public. Let's speak to Susan Hall, Conservative group member at the London Assembly. Good afternoon to you, Susan.
Hi, Ian.
I mean, I don't even know where to start with this. I mean, you know, somebody somewhere almost has blood on their hands, because these are people that came over, almost invited, frankly. We don't know who they are, didn't know at the time where they came from. They came over, obviously they were a little younger than they are now. But they came in, and this crime has happened. There's been other related crimes of a similar nature. Even today, although we can't talk about it, somebody else charged, another Afghan charged with a with a similar offence. I mean, what point does somebody say, hang on, enough is enough? We clearly have a big problem here.
Well, you started off by saying the right thing. It is about the victim. And I think it's about time we started concentrating on the victims and keeping British people safe. And this is not what's been happening. The human rights lawyers get involved. Well, I know this sounds dreadful, but I don't care about their human rights. I care about the human rights of the victims. And when we're looking at 15-year-old girls, and more and more recently, we've been hearing that judges are talking about culture, people that come from a different culture. Well, I'm afraid that the ones that are going to suffer from that are women and girls, because women and girls in some cultures aren't worth anything. And if people come across over to us illegally, very often on the boats, and they come from cultures where women mean nothing, this is how they will treat us when they come here. We've got to do something about this. People that break into our country illegally should be shipped back. They really should be. And there should be no ifs, no buts. They've got to go. Because if not, we'll end up with a situation where we've got so many people from different cultures thinking it's perfectly acceptable to treat girls and women in this way. It'll have tipped over the balance, and there'll be very little we can do.
It's interesting that all the debate I'm hearing around this, clearly there is the horror of a young girl being brutally raped by these 2 young men. I'm not hearing much from anyone on the political scene, Susan, which is why we wanted to speak to you, really, because there doesn't seem to be almost any recognition that this is something that we actually brought on ourselves, because we have a free entry into the United Kingdom. You can be we have no idea of your age, where you came from, or anything about your background. And as a result, you know, I don't for one second think that all people who come on boats would be capable of this. But the fact is, we're playing roulette here with young people's lives.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'll be honest, I look at them and I don't think they look like juniors to me at all. I don't think they look 17 years old. And why on earth haven't the authorities said, right, we'll do these scans or whatever they can do? I know dentistry can help out, find out how old they are, because some of them that come over, and we see pictures of them in the papers, and you think there's no way that's a child. We're just too damn soft. And the problem is we're soft towards them. And the people that are getting damaged are the young girls and women in the country, and it's getting worse.
Indeed. Listen, Susan, thank you for coming on with us. It is getting worse. We appreciate your time. Look, people will always find reasons to say, well, it could be anybody that is the perpetrator. The fact that these people came over on on boats is not relevant to the crime they went on to commit. There's no relevance to that. Not in theory, the fact that you travel on a boat, whether you travel on an aeroplane, whether you were born in this country. However, we imported this problem. We've imported a problem. And had that boat option not been available, this attack would not have happened. So you have to ask, well, who therefore is responsible for the people coming on boats? Who's responsible for allowing those people to come in from third world countries, countries that are culturally so at odds with the thinking of this world? And was that a factor in this? I would imagine it probably was. And we have other cases. I just mentioned somebody today appearing in court having been charged with raping 2 teenagers, also of Afghan descent. Again, can't talk about that, sub judice and all the rest of it, but it does feed into a wider narrative here. And I think joining the dots on this is not mischievous or inaccurate. Let's talk to Jill in Cornwall on this story. Jill, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. Well, I'm angry at the fact that these immigrants, whether they're legal or they're in the throes of claiming asylum or whatever, it doesn't matter whether they're here and we're keeping them in hotels and feeding them and paying for taxis and God knows what. When they commit crimes, and some of them have, it's not the first time this has happened, we're still paying for them because we put them in prisons where we pay them, feed them, give them a phone. They've got computers. I mean, I'm sorry, but it doesn't seem to matter what happens or how they behave or what they do. We're stuck with the costs. And when I look at how some of my neighbours and some of the people I live with, the things they struggle with, and it's just, it makes me really angry to think that people who do not deserve to have all the things that we give them, because they don't, get them regardless.
As I understand it, one of these Afghan attackers is going to be deported, and the other one I don't think will be, because it's something to do with the fact they pleaded guilty. One of them pleaded guilty while under the age of criminal responsibility or something of that nature, so therefore won't be. I mean, but what, seriously, we're putting these people in jail for 10 years, so we're going to pay for the jail time. Surely you would just put them on an aeroplane and take them back to Kabul or something. Surely.
We've got ourselves into a situation now where we cannot mind anything. We can't say that we dislike something. We cannot say that this is how it should be. This is how this country lives. We cannot have a like or we can't have a dislike of anything, because if the government tells us they don't want us to have that dislike, then we're in trouble for saying it. So I'm sorry, it's getting to the point where this country is the worst place to actually live in.
It's pretty darn bizarre at the moment, isn't it? Listen, Jill, thank you very much indeed for that. We seem to be impotent, we seem to be unwilling, we seem to not care, we seem to be adhering to a bizarre sort of new rule book that doesn't make any sense. I'm not hearing real anger coming from politicians. I'm not hearing loads of noise around the fact that 2 people that we invited to illegally enter the country. I know there were kids when they did this. I'm not going to... We've all been kids. We're not all rapists, OK? This is horrific at every level. 0344 499 1000. Mark is in Lincolnshire. On the issue of the Christian country, Mark, are we still a Christian country, the UK?
Hi there, Ian. It's a bit of a tricky one, isn't it, really? I mean, as quite a devout Christian, I have to be honest, and I have to say that structurally, yes, we're very much a Christian country. You know, everything that the country is Christian. You know, the laws, everything, it's all influenced heavily by Christianity. Is it an actual Christian country? I don't think so anymore. I think it's gone way too secular. we seem to, you know, you take the big Christian holidays, for example, Christmas, Easter. For the vast majority of people, unfortunately, they're nothing more really than an excuse to get in debt, buy loads of crap that they don't need, eat a load of stuff, drink a load of stuff. You know what I mean? That's really what it's mostly about. The importation of Islam has caused, and obviously the many issues that's raising, has caused this, you know, this rise of cultural Christianity, which is something I don't really get on board with as such. As I've just said, you know, culturally, yes, we are Christian, but the reality is, if you're not actually going to be Christian, then you will be replaced by other religions and ideologies, whether that's Islam, whether that's wokery, whether that's all this stuff, you know, the left-wing stuff. That's just essentially a religion.
So are you saying that Christians or potential Christians have themselves to blame?
In many ways, yes. Because, you know, in order for the country to be as they long for, you know, the people that are claiming cultural Christianity, if they want that country back, then you have to understand where that came from, how we arrived at that point. We arrived at that point because we did things like hymns in schools and, you know, more people went to church, more people, you know, talked about God and all that kind of stuff, whereas now that just doesn't happen, does it? You know, you're kind of mocked if you're a Christian in this country.
Yeah.
So as I say, you've left the door open really for Islam. And believe you me, I've talked about Islam many times. I consider it, you know, it's a terrible word to use, but I kind of consider it something of a parasitic ideology. When it gets in, they insist on so many things that you have to then comply with, you know, whether that's halal in schools, hospitals, whether that's, you know, praying wherever they want, whenever they want.
That's a very good point. I mean, the halal thing, I think, is a great example of what is a tangible issue that doesn't get thought about. You know, people don't, I mean, maybe you just raised it yourself there, Mark. People don't really, I mean, they go, oh, it's halal meat. You know, you walk through a supermarket and half of the stuff on the shelves is probably halal meat. Nobody really looks or really cares, it seems. But I think that's a really good example of where you have a cultural incursion or a religious incursion into the fundamentals of what a country previously was. School dinners, halal. I mean, why is that okay?
Well, the thing is...
And you would argue kosher too in that, I guess.
You can, but that's nowhere near as much of a thing as halal is. Kosher is only really observed by the Jews in the
and you would, yes, and a practicing Jew would probably seek out a kosher butcher in that respect. You wouldn't tend to see it on the shelves in Tesco or on the school menu.
To your point, Ian, where you were talking about, you know, the proliferation of these things like halal and what have you, that I'd mentioned. For an example, if I was to suddenly, I don't know, go and start singing hymns outside of a mosque, what do you think would happen? I'd probably be arrested, yeah. If I wasn't arrested, I'd certainly receive some serious abuse from the local Muslims going in the mosque.
I mean, you might be, if you were doing it deliberately to cause somebody, you know, some aggro, then...
But the worst thing, Ian, above all that, we can even take Islam out of that. If I was doing that in the street, I would also have many of my own people having a go at me, laughing at me, mocking at me, because they see it as, oh, you stupid Christian, you know, Bible basher and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
That's what they would do.
You might, there's sort of, oh, the mad God botherer down the road has been at it again, singing his hymns outside outside somebody else's place of worship.
Yeah, so, you know, you kind of get to a point where I'm constantly encouraging people to come back to Christ if they want this culture back, if they want their country back, to do this, because this is what you need to do, but you need to do it from your heart. I can't force you to do it. I can't tell you to just do it just to do this thing. You have to be genuine in that. But if you're not willing to do that, then don't blame us. You know.
I hear it. And do you? I mean, the big question mark. Do you sense that this is a sort of downward spiral where, you know, as we move through the years, there's going to be more kind of eating away, if that's the right word, at your faith, at Christianity?
Yeah, I mean, there already is anyway, Ian. I mean, you're pretty much persecuted in this country. If you go out and street preach, for example, if you display Christian symbols, you'll have a copper saying something, or again, you'll have one of the many rabid lefties, making comment. I've even heard stuff like this referred to as violence by these people. And this is all, whether it's some kind of grand plan, I don't know.
Yeah.
But this is all kind of like the thing when you come back to something like Islam, which is a very, in my opinion, a very toxic ideology. Not just the way it treats its women and stuff.
But that would be, I mean, I only step in at that point, Mark, because, the average, I always say the average person. Of course, there are examples where there is a sort of a hyper-sexist, horrendous sexist strand that exists culturally in some aspects of Islam. But, I know some strong Muslim women who wouldn't for 1 second allow a bloke to tell her what to do. I can tell you that much. So who are those people in this story?
Well, you've had Lubna on your show in the past, who's a very strong strong Muslim woman. That's received backlash from her own community.
Yeah, of course.
The problem with Islam, many Muslims are perfectly just normal people who just want to get on with their lives. I 100% accept that. The problem is there's also a very large amount of them that don't just want to do that, that want to take over, that see it as Dial Harb. This is a land of war. It will not be settled. It will not be at peace until Islam has full control of it. There are too many Muslims that see all of this stuff exactly like that.
Caliphate bound, I get it.
Online and all this kind of stuff.
And listen, it drives me nuts because every time I think I've made sense of, all that, the elements of sort of religious integration and different groups and societies, and, you hear very worthy people pop up on Channel 4 News and telling you everything's fantastic, and then you sit and watch something on TV that sort of suggests it's anything but. And of course, none of us want to generalise. I get that side of it as well, and, good and bad in all those, and I know it sounds like a great exercise, an example of fence sitting, but I think sometimes the only intellectual position to be in is one sitting above, looking down and understanding more than one thing at a time. Listen, Mark, I hear you. Thank you very much indeed for that. But you certainly ignite another aspect. And Islam does get more of a mention in this debate about are we still a Christian country than any other faith has. No one's talking about Sikhs or Buddhists, or Buddhist doesn't really count in terms of a religion. I get that. But whether you're talking about Hindus and Sikhs, and whether you're talking about Jews, and whether you're talking about different Hasidic Jews or Orthodox Jews, whatever, there's all these different... It's really only that's coming up this afternoon is Islam in this. And that's quite interesting in itself. Your response on that, 0344 499 1000.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Back with more of your calls in just a second. This is an interesting one that comes in from Craig. We were talking about bereavement and time off. Afternoon even, on bereavement leave, my Samara died prematurely in a horrific manner at the age of 13, and it was devastating to me. But I pushed myself to go back to work just after 3 days, and I couldn't have taken at least a week off. But the normality of day-to-day work did help reduce the emotional outbursts. Samara was a tarantula, by the way. Says Craig in Staffordshire. They're a funny bit of kid. I've held a tarantula. You know the funniest thing about holding a tarantula is they don't weigh anything. It's like you've got nothing on your hand. That was the bit. I'm sure there's bigger ones than maybe the one I held. I don't know. This was at London Zoo. We did a kind of behind-the-scenes thing for TalkSport some years ago. And one of the challenges was to hold a tarantula for 60 seconds. So this fella, we went out the back of the zoo, and they had like boxes and boxes, a wall of tarantulas. And they pulled this one out, and he went, "No, not that one. She's a bit aggy. You might have a problem with that one. Could nip you. I don't want a tarantula bite." And they put this thing on my hand, and then I put my other hand next to it, and then it crawled over onto the other. That's when it gets a little bit dicey, because you go, "Oh, it's a moving tarantula." But it was weight. It's like having a piece of paper on your hand. But beautiful, lovely bit of kit, your tarantula. Before we go back to your calls, we'll talk to Joan in just a second on Christianity in the UK. It's the Voice of Doom, day 3. We still haven't got a winner. Third day of this voice.
Instead of searching for work.
So for those who don't know, it's a mystery voice, but it's political. It's always a politician you're looking for. Young, old, left, right, dead or alive. That's clearly an old clip. Your task, very simply, is to identify who you think this is.
Instead of searching for work.
The only way to get in touch, 87222, 87222, if you think you know who that is. And if somebody answers correctly, we will tell you after the news who it is, but only if somebody gets it right. One more play.
Instead of searching for work.
If you think you know. Back to your calls. This will be Joan in Sunderland. What have you got for us, Joan? Afternoon.
Hello to you, Ian.
Hi.
I get a bit upset about the way things are regarding Christianity in this country.
Yeah.
You barely dare mention the word and somebody's upset. If you're a business and you put a nativity in the window, all you need is someone to come past, go in the shop, say I'm offended, and that is it. How have we allowed this to happen? I'm a Christian, and quite honestly, what other faiths do is up to them. I don't object to them carrying out their festivities or their holy days, but it seems as if everyone is down on Christianity. You can't mention it in schools, you can't mention it out on the street, and I'm appalled at the church. The church in this country is so silent. It's so woke. You've got children, 200 and odd children being given puberty suppressors. You've got drag queens reading stories in schools to little children, plays for toddlers by drag queens. Not one word. Christmas is not just about Christmas presents. It's Christ in Christmas. I'm just wondering when nativity Christian nativities will be objected to. And we in this country, we in this church, we in this government allow this to happen. Just unknown people to be offended. Now, I don't interfere in anyone else's life, but we are a Christian country by heritage.
We are indeed, but of course we're trying to balance that, aren't we, with being a free country that allow people to do other things if they're not Christians, you know, and that is central to apparently who we are. But you're absolutely bang on, Joan. There is a very real sense, real or imagined, but I think the former, that actually Christianity does sometimes take a bit of a back seat, and it might offend. And oddly, that accusation like, oh, you can't put Christmas lights up in Sheffield, which is not true, by the way, but when you hear those stories, have rarely come from other religions. It's not like Muslims or Jews that have objected to this, or Sikhs or Rastafarians or something. It's none of that. It's usually some dodgy woke-infested councillor who's gone, oh, we don't want to offend anybody. But actually, those people haven't said they're offended, which is a bit weird. 0344 499 1000. We'll have more of this in a few moments' time. Loads of great calls to come. Chun says, great show. Exactly 1 month ago, I had to put my dog to sleep. She was 14, had her since she was a pup, didn't take any time off. My boss happened to be away from the office that week. When I saw her, she said I should have said something and she would have had somebody cover for me. So I could have had some time off. I was touched by this and felt valued, whether she really meant it or not, but I believe she was genuine. That is lovely to hear, Chun, and it is devastating. 14 years with your little dog is like not an insignificant amount of time. You build up a bond and a friendship. Lines are open on that bereavement. How long should a boss allow you to be off for the death of a loved one? And on a lighter note, we have the voice of doom. Do you know who this is?
Instead of searching for work.
87222. If you think you know, let's get the news.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is the Afternoon Empire. Yes, welcome back to the home of common sense. We're talking about the pulse of this country. Would you suggest the UK is still a Christian country? And this comes on the back of the story of the teacher who was banned from teaching in his school after he told Muslim students that Britain is still a Christian state. There's a bit more to the story, but nonetheless, is that really outrageous that you would state a fact even in school to 10-year-olds? We'll have more on that story and, of course, your responses as well. Also this afternoon, ministers are weighing up plans to give workers a week's bereavement leave for what they call distant relatives, with Keir Starmer's bill covering in-laws, cousins, uncles, nieces, and your great-uncle Joe who you haven't seen for 50 years. Chosen family, it's called. Close friends who act as family would also qualify for time off. But would you get paid for it? Well, it depends on who you work for, I guess. And Keir Starmer is facing a Labour revolt over a planned NHS puberty blocker trial, which will see the drugs tested on children as young as 8 years old. Backbench MPs warn of unknown long-term damage, while Tory leader Kemi Badenoch has called for the trials to be abandoned immediately. These are kids of 8 years of age, children who still believe in all sorts of magical elements of this life, who are innocent, they haven't hit puberty. It's horrific. And of course the Health Secretary wasn't going to go there, was he? He banned puberty blockers. Now it's back on the agenda. What the heck has gone on? We'll have more on that too. 0344 499 1000. Loads to talk about here and lots of calls on all the subjects. Scott says, it's all very well for employees to have enhanced rights to bereavement leave, unfair dismissal and and the rest of it. But what about the poor small business owner? If he or she doesn't go to work, their family don't eat. It doesn't matter if it's illness, injury or bereavement, this government couldn't care less about them. Yeah, and that seems to be a growing theme. Well, the reason they couldn't care is because they don't understand it. They genuinely don't understand business. I think the fact that you own a business puts you in the kind of old-fashioned, you are the miser, horrendous boss. You're rich. If you're a landlord, you're even worse. All of these, they're a walking, talking stereotype, this. Like, they believe all of this old guff. It's in their hearts and in their DNA. And it's cobblers. And they're running the show, by the way. Paul in Bolton says, the government are responsible for all of this. And this is what we were talking about, people coming over on boats and carrying out horrendous crimes, rape in the case we were discussing. The role of a government is to protect the country and its people first. These migrants have destroyed the lives of their victims. They should have been put in a secure detention centre, not allowed to roam the country. No room in the centre, then deport them straight back to France. I mean, that would be, I would have thought, quite obvious. I can't think of any other scenario where you just allow somebody to pop over on a boat and then kind of wander around doing their own. You don't know who they are, where they've come from. It's not like we haven't had some evidence. And it's always, well, it's only a small minority that carry out these horrendous crimes. Yeah, everything's a small minority. Every horrendous regime started off as a small minority. People who commit horrendous crimes are a small minority. We keep our eye on the small minority for good reasons. 0344 499 1000. So what is going on with the peace plan between Ukraine and Russia? Donald Trump's plan is wobbling, it seems, after President Zelensky vowed Ukraine will not cede territory. Kyiv will send a Europe-backed counter-proposal following that Downing Street summit where the Germans, the French and others showed up, pushing back against this US draft, which has been seen as Russian-leaning. Some even arguing it was probably written by the Russians. What is the truth here? Let's speak to Mark Francois, MP, Shadow Defence Minister. Good afternoon to you, Mark.
Good afternoon.
Always good to have you on. You know your way around these kind of stories. What are you making, firstly, of this position? There was the big powwow yesterday in Downing Street. In fact, Zelensky always seems to be a permanent lodger in Downing Street. He's there so often. But if they're trying to get business done, that's a good thing. But there's a big wobble here because he's saying, I'm never going to cede territory. Clearly, this deal that Trump has made and come up with, or his administration, appears to look at ceding territory. How can anybody ever win this? It's the physics immovable object, right?
Thanks. Can I just give you something hot foot? I've literally just come from the chamber because I just had to vote the Liberal Democrats had a bill to take us back into the customs union because, of course, they want to rejoin the EU.
Yeah, of course.
I've just voted against it. Your viewers might be interested to know, because this doesn't happen very often. It was a dead heat. It was 100 votes each.
Really?
So a number of Labour MPs, you know, most of whom secretly want to rejoin the EU but haven't got the guts to say so.
Of course they haven't.
So it was 100 plays 100. So I'll double check it, but my understanding is the bill then falls because it didn't have a majority.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense. That is interesting. It's interesting. I mean, did anybody point out? I'm sure you and others probably did, Mark, that to the Lib Dems that there was actually a vote in 2016 on all of this.
It's been an interesting day. My colleague Simon Hoare, who voted Remain in the referendum, argued against the Liberal bill, made a very good argument, and obviously mentioned that the people of this country had voted peacefully and democratically to leave. Yeah. So I'll come on to Ukraine in a sec. I'm not trying to avoid it.
No, not at all.
I just thought your viewers might like, you know, hot foot from the lobbies of the House of Commons, dead heat, Lib Lab attempt to rejoin the European Union, defeated by the Tories and a few others.
Yeah.
So there you go.
And of course, the Prime Minister would look down very dimly, but well, we know secretly he'd quite like to rejoin all the institutions connected to it. But if Labour MPs are voting in favour of that, then that would cause them some difficulty, one would have thought, with the leadership.
3 votes, apparently, so they could vote however they wanted. And interestingly, when they were allowed to do that, most of them that did vote voted to join the customs union, you know, out on the way to rejoining. So anyway, turning to Ukraine.
Yes, what's happening here, Mark?
Right, well, I don't think Zelensky is I don't think he wants to cede that territory. And I don't think he'd be in a position to cede it, even if he wanted to, which he doesn't. Why? Putin wants him to give up the last bit of the Donbass, which involves something called the fortress towns. There are a number of strategically placed towns on vital ground. If the Ukrainians gave those towns up, and they've invested a lot of blood and treasure in defending them, behind that belt of towns, there's open country all the way to the Dnieper River. It's a bit like asking the Israelis to give up the Golan Heights, if you follow my analogy.
Yep, completely.
So militarily, it would be madness for Ukrainians to give that ground up. And so Zelensky's been in London, you know, lobbying support from the Prime Minister and the President of France and the Chancellor of Germany to say to the United States administration, you know, up with this, we cannot put. And oh, by the way, sorry to mix subjects, do you remember during the referendum we were told that if we did have the temerity to govern ourselves, we'd be isolated, no one would talk to us? So how do you explain the Prime Minister and the President of France and the Chancellor of Germany and Zelensky standing together outside Downing Street if we're isolated?
Yeah, that wasn't meant to happen, was it, according to the isolationist argument?
Yeah, there we are. But so to come back to the Ukrainian point, sorry, I don't think Zelensky can accept those Russian proposals. So we had 28 points. That was then whittled down to 19 points after Secretary Rubio met with the Ukrainians in Geneva. And we don't really know how many points, as it were, we've got left. But I was, having spoken to some congressmen recently, even they've got reservations about what the Russians are proposing. So I'm hoping that in the end, Putin's gambit won't pay off, because we need to remember we're dealing all the time with a man who was a former KGB colonel. He's not a Boy Scout, this bloke. Yeah. And he has personally authorised using highly accurate cruise missiles to blow up Ukrainian children's hospitals. This is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
What so we can't give in to him.
What I can't work out about this, Mark, I mean, obviously the Americans say, no, we wrote this. It wasn't, you know, didn't come out of Red Square, but there was some suggestion that it was very sort of Russian-esque in its wording. Certainly, if nothing else, it was very favourable to the Russian position. Now, it may be as simple as, you know, Trump wants this thing gone. He just wants to get it out the way, and he thinks if I side, if that's the right term, if I appear to at least be in that position with the bigger player, i.e. Russia, that's probably going to play out better for everybody ultimately. Ukraine will cry a bit and a few people will have the hump, but I don't care about that, I get it. Is it that simple? Is it that, do you think, even though the White House say, no, these were our words and our team put this together? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think we'd all like to see an end to the war. We'd like to stop seeing Kyiv being bombed night after night. But that would mean that Putin has to accept a ceasefire. And at the moment, he's not. He just constantly reiterates the same demands. He's frighteningly consistent in the hope that eventually the West will grow tired of this and say, oh, what the hell, let him have it. Now, look, if we do that, there are echoes of the 1930s. Because Putin believes in recreating something akin to the old Soviet. So he'll wait a few years, he'll pocket that, and then he'll start again. So it's better to stop him in Ukraine, because if we don't, we'll have to stop him in the Baltic states. And if we don't stop him there, we'll have to stop him in Poland. And by then you're in the middle of something that looks quite akin to World War III. So better to stop him in Ukraine.
But it is, I said at the beginning, Mark, you know, physics a movable object. I mean, it really is that, isn't it? Because neither side is going to budge on this fundamental issue. I mean, there's literally no way around this. So what, the war just carries on?
Well, I once put it to an American. I got an interesting, this was a while ago, I was in the States, and I put it to an American congressman. In fact, there's a group of them. And I said, and they said, yeah, but you know, surely they've lost the Crimea, they've got to give up some land for peace. So I said, OK, how about if just hypothetically someone had invaded the United States and you were being asked to give up Texas?
Yeah.
What would you do? And then a congressman from Texas chipes in and goes, hell no, over my dead body. And then another guy goes, well, they're not having Mississippi, and so on and so forth. So when you put it in those terms, American congressmen absolutely wouldn't have any of it. So I don't see why Zelensky should have to have it either.
Yeah, it's a fair point. Listen, on that point, Mark, great to have you on as ever. Thank you also for that little bit of breaking news on the rejoining. One crucial element of how EU do business. 100, he said. Marc Francois, that was, MP. He is the Shadow Defence Minister as well. I don't see what the way around this is. How do you deal with somebody who says, well, I won't move unless you give me something that the other side say is not up for discussion because you stole it in the first place? You don't get a prize for stealing something. Somebody comes around your house, raids your house, nicks your flat screen, your treadmill and a hairdryer. You don't say, OK, all right, as long as you give us back the hairdryer, don't worry about the other two. It's fine. They're yours. That's fair, isn't it? No, that's not fair. I'll give myself up as long as I can keep two of the things I nicked. Let's talk to Tony in Hertfordshire. Back to that question we began with about being a Christian country. Tony, what are you making of this?
Well, I'll be honest with you, I get really annoyed by this because, sorry, my next door neighbour's dog has gone a bit low now.
Wow.
Hang on.
Loud beast.
Let me get away from him. Yeah, I'm walking my dog.
Oh, I see, yeah.
One of the dogs in the garden actually has a bit of an attraction to my dog.
Oh, I see. Oh.
So that's flirting.
Really, yeah.
So, yeah, because I'm an atheist, right?
Yeah.
But this is a Christian country.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've seen over the years is a dumbing down of Christianity. Christianity getting pushed further and further to the back. We see Islam celebrations, we get Eid celebrations, we get all of that. Christmas lights, 9 times out of 10, in London now are appalling, absolutely shocking. The lights that get hung up there, there's no sense of Christmas at all. And it just feels now like Christmas is just another day. It doesn't feel like a Christian.
There's a lot of those. Keira Knightley and that bloke from, you know, the Ricky Gervais programme are doing an advert for Waitrose, and I got my tree up at home, Tony.
I saw that, but that was just so pathetic. I'm sorry, I just thought you were But you know, the other thing I realised was, because I know my values come from Christianity, right? My morals come from Christianity.
Yeah.
My father believed in God, my mother believed in God.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up and I went to Church of England school and I learned those values.
Yeah.
And I hold them very, very true to me. And they mean a lot to me. Morals mean a lot to me.
Sure.
And I thank Christianity for that. So I can give thanks to Christianity for what it gave me. As an atheist, I can still thank it and appreciate it. And Christians right now, all of my friends that I know that are Christian, they don't feel like they're valued. They don't feel like they're seen. And they certainly don't feel like their festivals, be it Easter, be it Christmas. It doesn't matter what Christian event it is. There's no big show for it. It's like it just doesn't matter to anyone anymore.
And on that point, Tony, I have to move on just to get more comments on, but thank you for that. That's Tony in Hertfordshire, who speaks as an atheist, as she said, but still can sense a sort of diluting of Christian values. Is it that Christian values have been diluted, or is it other faiths have become perhaps more prominent in many respects? It comes down to what we discussed yesterday, trigger word theory. I'm trying to think what the subject was we did yesterday. What was our first subject yesterday, Finn, that we discussed? The man who was cancelled for the former soldier who wasn't allowed to teach because he'd criticised illegal immigration, and the local football club said, sorry, so you crossed your line there, mate. Sorry, bud, you can't do it. Now, I think that was more about, I don't think that was about there being some sort of secret plan that, oh my goodness, he criticised immigration. He's therefore a right-wing nut job. It wasn't a slamming down of right-wingers. It was the trigger word theory that as soon as you go into that territory and start talking about certain, the trans issue and gender issue is obviously the other one, to a lesser extent these days, but sexuality, we talk about integration, multiculturalism, the word Islam, all of these are trigger words that you throw them up in any scenario, and the meerkats jump up like billy-o, and they're thinking, what's he saying? What he thinks what? No, actually, look at what he said. He didn't say anything bad or he didn't say anything illegal. He just made an observation on a Facebook post that people who do bad things are kind of scumbags. And he made the point that it wasn't everybody he was talking about. But by that stage, he committed the mortal sin of trigger word theory, where a set of words against the backdrop of a certain subject will send you to jail. Sometimes literally, by the way. I was talking metaphorically, but it will ostracise you in some respect or another because they can't kind of It's a bit like when people started losing their jobs because they had a view on gender, and it was only the Supreme Court that managed to sort of salvage a little bit of sense on that one. But prior to that, you have people go, well, he's a transphobe, and it's a bit like, it sounds a little bit like about homophobe. It sounds a bit like that, and it's probably in the same category. So big corporations were, proudly showcasing their credentials of diversity to include people that literally, scientifically, biological or other can't exist. But non-binary, that word got, printed by multinational companies. If you're non-binary, we're the bank for you. It's like, it's not even a thing. It's just someone's chosen identity, for God's sake. But it went into that. So the minute you breach that, all hell breaks loose. I think it happened with the former soldier in the story yesterday. It's happened with the teacher that we're discussing today as well. 0344 499 1000. Before we go any further, have we got a winner on the Voice of Doom? Before the news, this is the voice we played you.
Instead of searching for work.
Who is that? Some of the guesses: John Profumo, Douglas Hurd, Keith Joseph, Malcolm Muggeridge, William Beveridge, Sir Alec Douglas Hume, Winston Churchill. None of those are correct. Enoch Powell, that was guessed yesterday and the day before. It sounds a bit Powley, but it ain't him. Jeffrey Archer, it's not you. Kenneth Williams, Richard Crossman, Arthur Thomas Lloyd, no. And somebody called Robert, no. It's none of those people. Have we got a winner, though? No. Which means it rolls over for day 4 tomorrow. Stand by for that. It's getting very exciting already. Day 4, Voice of Doom, back at the same time, 2:45, right here on Talk. We're going to take a short pause. Don't be going anywhere. Back with some great guests. More of your calls on the way as well. This is Talk.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Howard says, this language that they are from a different culture enrages me. You know these woke liberal judges will hand out two-tier judgments. When I worked in Saudi in the 80s, was it okay for me to plead it's my culture when caught drinking? That's a fair point. And the cultural argument, I mean, there has been a couple of cases, wasn't there, when somebody was... I mean, I think one guy tried to plead his culture, you know, precluded him from understanding that putting your hand up a woman's skirt was wrong or something awful like that. And the judge was having none of it and, you know, sent him to the chiller or whatever the sentence happened to be. But it's the cultural thing, which is why the term multiculturalism is so oxymoronic. In fact, it's just anti-intellectual stupidity. It doesn't really make any sense. I mean, it's an observation. There is multi-cultures, but it's meant to sort of suggest that there is an irredeemable harmony about that multiculturalism and that it's all rubbing along fine. And of course, yes, people do get along mostly fine, whoever you happen to be. I understand all of that, but the issue on a national scale is far bigger than that. And when you start to ask the question about a Christian country, and then you throw in some obvious areas, I mean, halal meat came up as an obvious example. Circumcision, whether Jewish, Muslim, whatever it happens to be, would be another factor. You throw all of these into the discussion. These would be absolutely central to the debate. Neil is in Buckinghamshire. Back to that other discussion we had on the immovable subject of Ukraine. Neil, what have you got for us? Afternoon.
Afternoon, Ian. How you doing?
All right, thanks. Yeah, fire away.
Yeah. Well, the question is, I think people are getting a little bit sick and tired of us just splashing money at Ukraine. Now, we've got to fight Putin, exactly. But when you see Zelensky going around the country, it's like he's on a pop star world cruise, you know, on a world tour. And it's like, well, hang on a minute, we're struggling. All our money's going to go. We can't keep funding it. And if the Americans pull out the money, Europe are knackered. We cannot fight against you, fighting with the money.
Is it our responsibility, not solely, but to contribute, bearing in mind this is on our continent?
Yes, it is, but what about all the corruption and everything else?
Yeah.
We don't know where our money's going until, are we loaning them? Like, you know, we had to pay back the Americans during the war. Are they going to pay us back? Because I doubt it, because they're not going to have the money to do it.
Yeah. It's a good point. I don't disagree with you. Listen, George, thank you very much indeed for that. And yeah, how far do you take that? I mean, there's got to be a point when, yeah, we understand safety, security, we understand it's on our doorstep, we understand that no European country has been subjugated and invaded in this way since the last war, and there is huge significance for all of us. I get that. But realistically, as George says, how long can you keep that up for? Let's go. That was Neil. Sorry, this is George in Dundee. On the Christian country question, George, what have you got for us? Hi.
Hi, Ian. Hi, I'm currently in Fuerteventura, actually, not in Dundee. But,
nice. What's your weather like over there in the Canaries?
Oh, very variable. It's varying between 24 and 25 degrees on a sort of hourly basis. So
wow.
Tough.
So the sun is out?
Yes.
I find that incredible when somebody tells me that. I'm sitting here, it's bloody freezing. And it's wet, and there's winds and storms and all sorts going on. Anyway, I'm glad it's nice. So,
it's very nice.
What are you thinking?
Right. I was saying to the researcher there, someone had pointed out to my lady, here a few weeks now, someone had pointed out to my good lady. When we're walking about at night, 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, back at 8, there is noticeable Muslims speaking to Spanish mothers in the park as their children play. There's noticeable Muslim women chatting away to Spanish women, their next door neighbour over the garden fence sort of thing, or over the terraces in Spain. I have never yet seen that in Scotland. I've seen people obviously in the workplace. There's a bit of to and fro in the workplace. You've got to get along sort of thing. But socially, I've never seen it. And it is so noticeable over here. Whether it's the weather, whether it's more outside, whether it's too hot to not get along with folk, I don't know what it is, but it's incredibly noticeable. I actually looked up the Muslim population of Fuerteventura, and it's hovering around the 2% mark. Now, whether that makes a difference, because it's well below the British Muslim population, I don't know, or whether it's just a different type of Islam and a different type of, maybe even the Spanish. I know a lot of British people who won't speak to anybody Muslim for fear of offending them. Maybe the Spanish have just got the mentality, well...
It could be that. It could be that... I mean, is this whole thing about a numbers game? There's so few Jews in this country in comparison to Muslims, and similarly in comparison to Sikhs or Hindus. So is the fear, and we have seen elements of our institutions change their rules and regs, again, back to the halal meat or washing your feet in the sink in a school, whatever it happens to be. Is the fear, George, that if too many people of a different faith to the host country's faith, Christian, increase in numbers, if those numbers increase, then there is inevitably a problem. And the problem would be, naturally and understandably, is that group of people will attempt to have incursions into all sorts of other areas of life. They'll become more influential. There'll be councillors, there'll be MPs, possibly even prime ministers.
Yeah, I've nothing against councillors, MPs. But what I think as well is that, like on this island, there won't be noticeably Muslim areas, where in Britain and in Scotland now, there's noticeable Muslim areas, which again stops integration. It puts up barriers to integration. Plus as well, I think with Islam, I think it's pretty well known now that part of Islam's intent is to move into other countries and take over. So that's where the fear comes from as well. And I think it's a justifiable fear.
Yeah. There it is, George. Thank you very much indeed. George, I say in Dundee, he's actually in Fuerteventura, enjoying 24, 25 degrees. Beautiful heat. And we're in a storm of some kind. Just Me says, I think he's quoting me when I said, not all those who arrive on a boat will go on to rape, murder or stab or steal. Just Me says, but they're illegal. They're already a criminal. What in God's name will it take for the media to stop appeasing this scum? Another Southport, more schoolgirls attacked. What will it take? Well, I don't think you can blame the media for that. The media can only report on it. Of course, you're not illegal if you claim asylum, and there's the problem. So it's not illegal if you are somebody who wants to claim asylum to throw away your passport. You can shred it and film yourself shredding it if you want. It's not illegal to arrive without papers if you're claiming asylum. By the way, I'm not defending this position, I'm just explaining it. And it becomes a ridiculous position when you have people en masse, 60-odd thousand since Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, hundreds of thousands since this whole initiative kicked in. Of course you do. And again, I made the point. I made the point that Just Me made. And I mean, Southport, I don't think is, as we now know, is not the best analogy for what we're talking about. But many other crimes are. In fact, the one we spoke of earlier, the rape of a 15-year-old girl by 2 boat migrants, is a perfect example of the problem. But of course, we're playing a game of roulette because of the refugee status. You arrive in the country, you go, I'm claiming asylum, I'm a refugee. And that is therefore your human right, of which we are signed up to acknowledge. So you might be illegal in your entry of coming here, but the minute you shout, I'm claiming asylum, you're no longer illegal. And that's the sort of potty, sort of bananas, back to front, upside down world we are in. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Oh, God. It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. So much to talk about. And, of course, another day and another story that will drive you absolutely potty just thinking about some of the implications of this. Keir Starmer facing a Labour revolt over a planned NHS puberty blocker trial, which will see the drugs tested on children as young as 8. I mean, I didn't just make that up. That is the fact of the matter. Backbench MPs warn of unknown long-term damage, while Tory leader Kemi Badenoch has called for trials to be abandoned immediately. Let's speak with Kelly Jane Keane, leader of the Party of Women. Kelly, nice to have you on with us. The reason I find this, not only is it deeply and demonstrably disturbing, but my confusion is that Wes Streeting, thankfully, a little while back said, right, we're going to stop all this nonsense. I've seen a lot of evidence. There's no need. It stopped. And then half an hour later, for somehow opens the door for this to happen. Who's got to the Health Secretary, or what has happened for him to change his mind?
Well, £10.5 million given to King's College London to do the research. And I have a feeling that that was always on the cards, to be honest. Whilst we celebrated a victory and people saying the right thing, I think Cass left a very wide open door for them to experiment. The experiment is going to be 2 years. Nothing out of that experiment will give us any new information. You know, they're scanning bones and brains of these children who are going to be offered up by their parents to do this. And I just think that at the end of it, they'll go, oh, well, we haven't found anything too bad. We'll just carry on. I mean, it's a big money spinner. The Chelsea and Westminster Hospital is opening an entire wing for phalloplasty, which, for people that aren't familiar, is where a woman has a fake male appendage made that doesn't work. Clearly, it doesn't work. And so it's big money for the NHS.
In an NHS hospital, they're making fake penises to appease. And I don't dispute if some people believe they're a man or believe I think we're all of the same thing. You call yourself whatever you like. Nobody cares. It's up to you. What we can't do is change science, and we can't change laws, and we shouldn't be using taxpayers' money to accommodate your identity crisis, no matter how sympathetic we might be to it. That's just a reality. But when it comes to kids, we're in a whole different territory here, right? And if children as young as 8 years old, what kind of parent decides at 8 your little girl is actually a boy? I mean, seriously.
Well, a very toxic, damaged, abusive parents, as far as I'm concerned, would make that decision and offer their child up for this experiment. But then the doctors are willing to do it. Back in 2019, my organisation did a debate at the House of Lords. We had a session. It was hosted by Lord Lewis Mooney, and what we discussed there was the harm of puberty blockers. And then, 5 years later, they decide that they're not going to do that anymore. But back then, not a single MP attended that meeting, not one. They just were too scared to come. So, wow. Yes, we've progressed a little bit, that some of them are willing to speak out now, but it's just simply not good enough. There's not one good reason I've heard. There's not one benefit to a single child that they know from this trial. And what we do know is hundreds of children have gone through this service before, and we could just go and contact them and find out what's happened to their fertility, what's happened to their sexual function, what's happened to their happiness. I would think that would be a good £10.5 million spent.
Is anybody listening to this? I mean, Wes Streeting talked about, I don't want to misquote him, but he was on the lines of saying, all safety tests are very sort of rigorously identified, and, care is, almost as if the way I read it, Kelly, it was almost saying, don't worry, there's not going to be a problem here. I don't know how he or anyone else could guarantee that.
Yeah, I mean, what we're saying, let's try an experiment on the kids. I mean, it's just so preposterous. It's not like we haven't got scandals in our past in this country with lobotomies and a variety of medical experiments that were absolutely terrifying. We look back now and we think, how on earth could we do it? But it's the fact that it's children. There's no way they can consent. No child can possibly understand what it will be like as an adult to never have sexual function and not be able to have children. There's not a single child that you could possibly explain that to. I mean, a child can't even be found criminally responsible of nicking a Mars bar. So I don't see how they would possibly understand, sacrificing their bodies for the rest of their lives.
What's the kind of response to your response then? Are there people in government, are there MPs now that are open to, I would say you shouldn't need persuading on basic facts of life, but are there MPs that are at least on board with the kind of concerns that you have?
Yeah, I think there are, and I think that's thanks to the countless women who have campaigned and raised this as an issue and consistently made the news and made stories and made a fuss on social media. And we've created an environment in which these MPs feel they can speak. But why they didn't before at £90,000 a year, I have no idea. I thought that would be the thing that they would do. It's such a home run, right? To say, I stand against experimenting on children. Like, you would think that would be a guaranteed, well, I'll vote for that person next time round because they stuck up for the most vulnerable people in our society. But no, there's other things at play, I'm sure, that lead them to this. And I guess the LGBT networks in political parties and throughout the civil service has probably got something to do with that.
And when you look at those numbers, these trials proposing to inject 226 physically healthy 8 to 13-year-olds with hormone-suppressing drugs to halt natural puberty, that sentence alone should send the shivers up the spines of anyone, least of all a clinician, for goodness sake. And even the clinical world would acknowledge that this is sort of work in progress. So why you want to be messing around experimenting on children, I don't know. And then, of course, parents themselves. I mean, it's beyond sad.
Yeah, I'd like a little bit, when you sign that consent form for your child, I'd like every single medic and every parent that signs that consent form to say that they give that child the right for a 50-year limit, that they can sue every single person that had a hand in their sterilisation. And I think let the law come and do its work. If morality is missing here, then let's make it financially crippling for anybody who has anything to do with damaging kids.
Spot on. Kelly, thank you. Kelly J. Keane, leader of Party of Women. I mean, that is basic common sense. I can't think of anyone that would put their name to... Well, there clearly are some physicians and the like who will. I mean, Labour MP Jonathan Hinder brands the study uncivilised, organising cross-party efforts to stop the immoral experiment. Tory MP, Tory leader Kemi Badenoch urges immediate abandonment, while Health Secretary Wes Streeting insists the trials should proceed. Wes, what are you doing, man? Why are you giving the green light for experimentation on 8-year-old kids? I would guess mostly girls. 8-year-olds. I mean, think about the innocence of an 8-year-old. You know, an 8-year-old still likes, you know, messing around with toys and skipping and dancing around the playground and looking forward to seeing Father Christmas, you know, come to their house. And you're lobbing in a drug that's going to halt natural puberty. This is carnage stuff. This is carnage. This is an assault on children. Surely anybody can see that. 0344 499 1000. It's 3:45. Back to that horrendous and disturbing story. There's a long list of them today, of the Afghan rapists. Trevor in Edinburgh, what are you making of this story? Good afternoon to you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. I'll be very calm with this because it's a very hot topic and it raises high emotions in people, as it should.
Correct.
It's not at all, rape is not at all funny. I knew a girl who was 14 years old. Now, this wasn't because of any immigrants. This was a homegrown rape, if you like, and that's a horrible way to put it. She was gang raped by 5 men, and I was a witness to it as a boy of 12 years old. Now, I'd already been abused in children's homes, so I know what that feels like. And me and my friend John were playing one day in a park where she was raped. 5 men, 19, 20, 18, and 2 at 22, attacked this girl.
She was how old, did you say, Trev?
She was 14 years old. I can't give you her name.
No. We wouldn't want to ask that anyway.
These men battered this girl, subjected her to 40 minutes of stuff that I can't talk about because I burst into tears. It was horrible. I'm a grown man with children. But I'll tell you this, what they did to that girl was absolutely inexcusable. She was left. She looked like a piece of steak that had been butchered on a table, covered in blood. So me and my friend got the police and the ambulance came and took her away, and we were asked to give statements. And they managed to identify these vermin, because that's what they were. They got taken to court about, it would be 2 or 3 months later. They weren't held on trial. They weren't held and arrested and kept in jail. They were on remand for a couple of days. Then they were allowed because they had a lawyer, and then they had to go to court and make an appearance. They go up to the High Court in Edinburgh, in the High Street. They go up there. The sentences they got per person for what I'm talking about. Now, this isn't the worst of the story. The girl went on. She had to get operations on her body, which stopped her as a female from ever having children. That in itself is really horrible, but the poor girl wasn't able to even look at a man. And she got married eventually when she was 42 years old. Now, she got raped at 14, remember? So she went for 20-odd years, nearly 30 years, absolutely broken, destroyed.
Of course.
Mad, crazy. Her brother wanted to get a gun and go and shoot people. He was furious. The police had to restrain him. Now, I mean, because they have to, you can't go around. The way that the government's been pussyfooting around about this, rounding up people. That poor girl didn't get married till she was 42. Her brother was driven to wanting to hurt and really harm people because of what they'd done to her. It's her sister, for God's sake. You know, and then when you hear people who are being pussyfooted around, I'm furious at the government. Because I'll tell you, I was watching the government today and talking about the lady Barnes who's going to be chairing this meeting.
The grooming gang inquiry.
These people have been asking for justice for years and years. This has been going on a long, long time, I can tell you. I waited. I was between the ages of 7 years old and 16 when I was sexually abused by paedophiles and other people. Now, I went through that for a lot of times, not consistently for 13 years, but in and out of children's homes. And that's where it occurred because there was predators everywhere at that time. I complained. I went to the police. At that time, they wouldn't do anything because you're a stupid wee laddie. You know, you're 12 years old. You're telling us people, don't be silly. And all the rest of it, I got all that. It took me 23 years of research to gather the information I needed to go to the abuse inquiry. And by God, when I went there, I read them the Right Act for 6 hours solid. They were practically begging me to stop and go out the door because I was telling them everything. And it was horrible, and it was not nice to listen to, and I was very ashamed having to speak like that, because I'm a grown man now. Sure. This was only in 2019. It was only 6 years ago. I'll never forget the day walking in there to that room with my partner Elizabeth, and sitting down there and having to pour out my guts to people I didn't know. People that were strangers to me that I'd never seen in my life. But you had to go and give your evidence because they had to gather data because they had to find out what the bloody hell was going on.
Of course.
These people who done these things to these girls, I'll tell you honestly, I swear, if I had the power to get every one of them and deport them today, they'd be on the boat home. But a plane, I don't care how they get them home. I wouldn't have them in this country another day. Yeah. You go over to a country like theirs and do what they've done here, you'll be taken outside and shot or stoned.
You absolutely would. And in fact, in identifying the real problem here, or the real issue, which is the victim and the sheer levels of horror, unspeakable levels that other humans would go to harm an already terrified, petrified, vulnerable young girl. Often those details get lost because people mention the word rape or attack, and it's said so often, Trevor, as you know, that people don't really consider the finer details. Sometimes you have to hear what you've just said in order for us to really digest the enormity of what has happened. So these characters, you use the word vermin, and perhaps that's even too good for these people that attacked this girl recently, have got 10 years in jail. One will be deported. That's not enough, really. In fact, I sense I would like to deport them now, but I don't think that's likely to happen. Trevor, thank you very much. It's a disturbing call, but it's a highly relevant one, sir. And I salute your ability to be able to tell it as eloquently as you did. Thank you. Trevor in Edinburgh. This is Talk.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of here quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 0344 499 1000. Joseph is in Peterborough. Back to that question, Joseph. Is the UK still a Christian country? What do you think? Hi.
In name only.
In name only, so you don't sense or feel it, no?
Well, no, because what's happened is the Church of England, with all its money, has never done anything to get the congregation into churches. And cathedrals are only used for tourists. They're not used by people anymore. When you want to go, it's usually, oh, it's £12 entry, there's a recital on, or there's a Christmas do on. You can't, it's become a place of buying and selling, just to keep the roofs on them. And on top of that, you have Prince Charles, who gave St. George's Hall in Windsor for a Muslim prayer and actually joined them. He's supposed to be the defender of the faith of Britain. He's not. He's a defender of any faith.
You mean because he chose to alter the words of it?
Yes.
Defender of the faiths, wasn't it?
Yeah. And he took an oath when he became a king.
Yeah.
To defend the faith, fidei defender. It should be taken from all coins. He doesn't defend no faith.
Okay. So you sense it's in all, but so it's just the name. It's a Christian country exists, but there's no sort of tangible feel that we are.
No, we're not. It's all in name. I mean, if we were a Christian country, would we have swept all this gang grooming under the carpet? It's a totally evil government we have. They're totally evil.
Well, I think in there, I said it right at the beginning, it's what you'd call the kind of ultimate dilemma, because we are constitutionally, we're a Christian country. I know we don't have a written constitution, but our head of state is also head of church. And so you have all of that going on. And the biggest religion in the UK is still Christianity. We've got cathedrals and churches and lovely little villages with those beautiful steeples and wonderful, magnificent stained glass windows and all that goes with. So we have all of that. And that would be the dominant symbolism of faith in this country. But the dilemma bit is that we're also a country where we support free speech, we have liberal values, so you can be who you want to be, call yourself whatever you want to call yourself. If you want to have a different belief, if you want to I don't know if your religion is football, and I mean that, you know, quite seriously. If that is your God, almost, that you worship only the great green and the beautiful game. That's who you are. That's fine. You can do that. If your religion is something that, you know, no one's even ever heard of, but you've read it somewhere, some old scripture. It's a variant of a faith. You can be that. You can be a Muslim, a Jew. So in our thirst to be diverse, we said, yeah, you can do all of that. But does that in any shape or form dilute the entire structure, the template of a Christian country? Or is it a no-brainer question? It's inevitable that you are going to somehow dissipate the authenticity of the national faith. Peter Cardwell is here, former Archbishop of Canterbury as well, so you know a thing or two about this. You lost. It's sad you lost that gig.
It is. Yeah, there's a lot of criticism. I did feel they were.
I mean, doing ninja moves with your staff, I think it's fine.
Yeah. I would say so. Yeah. But they call me a crook rather than just holding one. Yeah, there we are.
There you go.